How do you learn who you really are? It's not found in books. It's found on the battlefield. All right, what's up, Warriors? Welcome back, Battlefield of the Mind. I'm just going to be real with you. I'm very happy today to have Angelo, Vincent, Deboni back. He was on an earlier episode, and it's been a year, and man, this recap has been needed. I'm excited just to hang. Yeah. So please, Vincent, let's just jump in. I'm excited to hear what you've been up to for the last year.
Well, that's a whole nother story. So, Rick, I think, there's some stuff we spoke about last time, and I think I was telling you already that I work with people who are in gender transition, okay? And so some people might be getting nervous because I'm talking about this already. But what you must understand is I work with the interest to your listeners is the men who transitioned and then detransition. Okay, so it's important to make that distinction. So what I ended up with was not really a formal study, but kind of a study of why men do that. So a lot of the detrans men, they come back with the way I see it is they kind of come back with knowledge, and they talk about what made them choose this whole idea of living as a woman, okay, which I must tell you, Rick, is absolutely fascinating stuff, because if you want any evidence of the bias against men in our mostly our Western society, these kids are that evidence. And it's not a mistake that no one wants to hear from these boys, okay? When I say boys, I mean, the oldest one I've got is actually 47. But some of the younger ones I think the youngest I had was about 23. So that's what I've been doing. That's the work that I focus on. I work with the families as well. And this might be helpful to the people that are listening. Like, there's a lot of confusion about how to deal with a man who initially develops the incel culture, or the incel paradigm. Okay, the involuntary celibate paradigm. And that is actually the gateway to trans ideation. So the people that are listening, like, this is becoming so much more common. They need to be vigilant that the young man, the young male who fails to adapt to his masculinity is becoming more and more and more vulnerable to ideologies, to maladaptive behavior, if I can use the technical term. So Rick, I don't want to keep talking because you know me, I'll talk for an hour.
No, I think it's good. I want to do both of those categories. Let's talk about the one where you said like there's a thing that becomes very obvious. Like if you're saying like, hey, there's a Western culture thing against guys here. What are some of the stuff in that category of like, well, here's some things you guys can look out for. Let's raise our awareness. Like that's there for guys, and that's there, because there's so much people don't want to talk about, but like it exists. And so what stuff is like that exists that you could say these are some categories that we can't keep ignoring?
Wait, let me get you right. What do you mean by that?
Well, if these guys are going through stuff where like they're doing transitions and they're like, this is what guys are facing to make it so it's even like that's even an option. What are some of the attacks on men in Western culture that you're seeing?
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So, the technical term is gamma bias. So if your listeners don't know what gamma bias is, you need to Google that. There's a organization in the UK run by John Barry and Martin Seeger. They did research, so proper empirical research into this bias, and they studied it, and they proved repeatedly that there is a bias. Basically, so now the guys listening are gonna immediately understand this. That basically in our society, anything that men do, a man does, can be easily vilified, okay? But anything that a woman does gets highlighted. We see this in media, we see this within families, we see this even within marriages, okay? So it is a bias across the system. Okay, it's actually a bias in most cultures, but we're talking about Western culture right now. So that's kind of the overall summary. But on a more specific level, if a guy looks at porn, for example, and he's got maybe he's got like an emotionally sensitive nature. The first time he sees porn, what he sees is he sees men behaving a little bit uncontrolled, a little bit brutish, a little bit, in some cases, quite barbaric. I mean, we don't need to go into detail about that, but I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. And then the way they react is very deep shame. Okay, so now the word shame is it's the, how can I put it? It's the elephant in the room doesn't even describe it properly. Shame has been stripped out of Western culture. It's a huge problem. Parents don't want to shame their children. We don't want to shame each other. But you know what? Shame was the mechanism that drove civilization. If you really analyze it. So these kids don't know how to process shame. So do you
mean when like it was a foundational piece? Do you mean like people used to check people? Like when there used to be a point where like, hey, like for a guy to guy, like, hey, we're not hitting girls anymore, man. We're gonna be gentlemen. We're not gonna hit girls. So don't hit girls, man, because like that's not cool. We don't do that.
Exactly.
Or like women going, hey, don't sleep with every guy in town. That's not a good look. Don't do that, ladies. So ladies checking ladies or guys checking guys, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
100%. Yeah. You see, remember, I'm a counselor, so I'm going to focus on the underlying emotion. Okay. There's a really good book out at the moment, literally titled Emotional, by Leonard Medilov or something like that. I can't pronounce his surname. His book sums up the research on emotions really well. I recommend people read that, especially men, because we have these, like you said, Rick, we have these rituals and these, nowadays we call them memes where we check each other. But what we should pay attention to is the underlying emotion, okay? You will feel shame if you keep picking on girls. So I'm going to call you out so that you don't feel shame later on. So we acknowledge by calling out each other as men. I totally agree with you. I mean, men tend to cap it immediately. Okay. Healthy men, let me say, healthy men tend to cap it immediately. Okay. You shouldn't do that, bro, because why? Well, if you let me interject, because you're going to feel shame later on, you're not going to know what to do with it. So you're going to smoke weed, or you're going to watch porn, or you're going to drink too much alcohol or whatever. Look, I'm not a prude, okay? So I don't want people to think that I'm like totally anti these things. But if you're doing it for the wrong reason, and we're supposed to say recovering alcoholic, but I was an alcoholic twice in my life many years ago. So
yeah, I don't call it recover. I call it, I used to cope in a negative way. I don't do that anymore.
Exactly.
I used to use alcohol for coping, but now I don't do that anymore. I learned.
I love that. You see, this is why I like talking to you, because you have a way with words.
Yeah, well, I write on this stuff too. So I'm going to do a quick recap here. I called this out. It was probably a few years ago when I called this out, when I told people, watch the judgments, because that's going to be the attack. And the judgments is going to be the mechanism to ensue doubt into you. Like, you are bad. You are wrong. You're not good enough. You shouldn't even talk. And trying to apply doubt. I did an entire training on how to defeat doubt, shame, and depression. And they're all linked together, and it makes somebody vulnerable like this. So if I say like you're not good enough, or you're not worth listening to, or you're born wrong, or you're stupid, like that's an external attack, which is doubt. So doubt will be somebody's judgment or a subjective opinion upon you. And then that'll go into your whatever goal system that you have. And then whenever you go into your goal system, like, well, I want to try and achieve this, or I want to have this, or I want to be this, or I want to have something that like makes me feel good. Like, I don't care if it's win a trophy, start a business, have a relationship, no matter what it is. it'll start getting corrupted, that I'll put into my feelings that feel bad about it, into my belief system, and my belief system will go into my potential. So what I mean by this, and I can show you this if you want me to show you like a map of this.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
want to see it? This will be for the YouTubers. So people listening right now, I'm going to be showing a video. Hopefully this doesn't screw up the whole thing. I've had it before where this program does not like when I share screen. All right,
okay.
let's do this. And I'm going to pick this. I want to show you what I mean.
Oh, nice. Okay, I can see that well, yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm going to show you how this thing works, and hopefully it zooms in works. So here's where the enemies within come in. This is where I teach on like doubt, fear, excuses, distractions, and how they come into your feelings, which is the easiest avenue to get into you is your feelings.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And so doubt will come in like, you're not good enough, you can't do it, you're stupid, you shouldn't even talk because you're a male, whatever the judgment is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that goes into whatever it is I'm trying to do, my motivation, like whatever I want. Maybe I want to lose weight, or maybe I want to have a relationship, or I want to start a business, or I want to be the champ, whatever it is. You have a goal, something you want to achieve. Well, that's what make it so that your feelings about what it is that you want to do will start getting corrupted. Your belief system, which is the core of who you are, is going to go, well, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I can't do it. Maybe I'm not. Well, how much potential do you have? Well, you have exactly as much as you believe you have. And so people are like, it's unlimited. It's like, no, you have a limit. It's whatever you decide it is. And so if somebody goes like, you're not good enough, you're like, I'm not good enough. Well, what do I believe I can do? And then when you go to try to get your goal, or you put some action into it, it's not going to be very much. And when you have low action that goes in, you get low results. And low results goes back to like, well, my attitude about what it is I'm trying to do is not very good. So I'll maybe try one more time, but this time I really don't know if I can do this. They said I'm not good enough. I can't do it. I'm just a guy. I'm stupid, whatever it is. And now I barely, but like just the worst action into it, and get even worse results, which just confirms. And at this point, once I get these bad results, and then it goes right back to here at this line on the second time, third time around is where it shifts. This is where it goes from you are not good enough. You can't do it. You're not worthy. You're bad. That's the doubt. That's external. At this point is when it shifts into a new belief system. This is where it shifts from you are not good to I am not good. This is where it shifts from external to internal. And it goes from like you are to I am. Now that person no longer has to be around anymore. Once this belief system gets altered, your identity starts to get shaken. Now this changes from I am maybe I'm good enough to I am not good enough. Well, because of that, there's a death that happens, a loss of authenticity, a loss of purpose, a loss of potential, a loss. You die. Something dies. Something authentic dies, which will kick on your loss system.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Something that's authentic dies. Something that's I can do it, or I believe in myself. Well, that got messed up and that died. You don't realize your loss just got kicked on, so we try and push it down. I don't want to think about that. I don't want to talk about it. I'm not good enough. I am useless. I'm a piece of shit. I am an idiot. I am bad for being a male. Whatever it is, I don't want to talk about it. But the anger will ensue because there's something there that was lost or taken, or an injustice that I was treated poorly, or nobody's listening to me. And then there's the bargaining element. Like, well, maybe if I just act differently, maybe if I do what they say, maybe if I were to be this way, maybe I could be liked if I were to act what they tell me to do, whatever the judgment is. Maybe if I just do what they say, they'll approve of me and I can be accepted again. And this is the bargaining phase you're going to go into. And then you're going to stack your shame. You're going to be just subconsciously stacking it. I am a piece of shit. I am not good enough. I am worthless. I am. And when you start doing this negative self-talk stack, every single person I've helped out of depression does this cycle. They negatively self-talk something that came in externally that got corrupted into internally. And when this system is running, it's just going to keep reinvigorating the feelings that come from I'm not good enough, which just makes it keep feeding the belief system that I am bad. I am not correct. I am a mistake. I am. And your entire identity now is going to be corrupted because I didn't understand at this very spot right here how to stop an external judgment from getting in there to corrupt my system, which is whatever somebody said you are getting turned into I am. And being able to do this, and this is why I teach, like, you can just break this contract. If you break the contract between doubt, If you break this
Yeah.
contract, it makes it so there's now a cognitive dissonance in your belief systems to say, well, the I am not good enough or I should not believe in myself now gets messed up. And this is why I teach people how to beat doubt very quickly, because this one had me down. The way you beat doubt is you understand that the definition for doubt is that doubt offers nothing and takes from you everything. It's important to understand this. So if I said, well, I have a dream or an idea, well, if you get that idea right, I've got all this potential, all this stuff that I could do, it'd be fulfilling. I could, win the championship. I'd feel good enough, or I start my business, or I get security or safety or belonging. You get all this potential is sitting there if I have like the dream, and then someone will say, you're not good enough, or you're a piece of shit, or you should shut the fuck up, or whatever the judgment to try to put you down is. Now, if I look at all the possibility that I get with potential here and someone says, you're not good enough, what is this offer going to give me if I accept the I'm not good enough offer? What do I get? Do you see it? What do I get if I go, you're not good enough? What do I get? You get nothing. There's nothing there. You're not good enough is nothing. I'm not telling you a better way. I'm not teaching you something new. I'm just judging you to tell you something that's just a judgment. But there's no substance to the offer itself. And so I've got all this potential for my motivation or my dream or my goal or my vision or whatever it is. But then I got this offer for nothing. And people don't understand how to watch for these offers or that you can even decline them. And so they start running these offers through their entire system. But really right here, all you have to do on doubt is go like, you're not offering me anything. You said I'm a piece of shit. I mean, what are you offering me? You're like, nothing. I just wanted to say you're a piece of shit. I'm like, so you got nothing? I'm like, no, I just want to call you a name and make you feel bad. I'm like, yeah, you got nothing. I'm going to push that. I'm going to decline that offer and remove that from the table. You got nothing there. This allows me to keep my self-worth, my self-esteem, my confidence intact because I didn't allow somebody's judgment to start corrupting my system. The reason it's important to understand this is because if you can go back and rescind that offer and say doubt offers nothing and takes from you everything, once you can cut it here, even after it's become shame, it makes it so the doubt can actually be rescinded. And this makes it so the shame actually does get goofed up because now you're able to get to acceptance and closure because you now can challenge it because it's external. It's a different thing now. It's not internal anymore. This is the way you can start going back to when a parent or a friend or a social media post or an ex or whoever did it to judge you into submission. You can now go, wait a second, that's inauthentic. That's not true. The reason we have to watch for it is because once it goes through the whole system, it turns into shame and then becomes a loss. It changes the definition, which encourages depression, which makes you very vulnerable. It goes from external, which is doubt offers nothing to take from you everything, and then stacks shame to create apathy. And this is where depression is, you can't even get up and move. You don't even want to get off the couch. You don't want to get out of bed. And that changes the definition to personification, which means you become nothing and it takes from you everything. It becomes identity. And this is why it's important for what you just said for like, watch out for the judgments. This is why I teach like, watch for the judgments. Subjective opinions are not offering anything. But if you're trying to go into belonging, if you're trying to fit in, if you need to be popular, if you need to be loved, if you need to, whatever the thing may be, whatever you may be looking for, if you're not good enough or you're never going to make it, if you have no training on how to see these things, these offers for nothing will keep being accepted. And then your identity to be able to feel authentic, loved, approved, needed, anything is corrupted. It's all corrupted now. And this is why I say catch the judgments, because everything you just said about like the belief system change, we do a training about belief systems. Everything is good or everything is bad. It just depends on what glasses you put on. And like you said, well, everything the guys are doing are being vilified. Those guys are villainous. They're bad. Everything guys are bad. Everything girls is good. Well, those are just filters. Those are belief filters. So that means you can turn anything into anything. I can make you a bigot. I can make you a racist. I can make you a sexist. I can make you anything that I want just with my filters that I add to it. No matter what it is, I'm like, well, that's because you're racist. You're like, we weren't even talking about race. I'm like, I bet you feel that though. I bet you are. And you're like, no, it didn't even come up in the conversation. We're talking about math. You're like, yeah, well, it's because you hate whatever. And it's like, no, I'm talking about math. Where are you getting race from? What are you talking about? This is the filters that people use. If you do not have defense against judgments and you do not know how to catch these doubt offers that you are bad, you're a piece of shit, you're useless, you're wrong, you're bad, all those, if you can't catch it, that's how easily this can corrupt your entire system and have you have an identity around loss. And nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares. When it comes to empathy for men, I've done, this is something I've been doing studies for years. I have thousands of guys in my organization. And I go, how many of you are completely unfamiliar to a woman going, how's my man's heart today? How's my man's heart today? And they're like, no one's ever asked me that. I have no idea. I don't even know how to answer that because no one's even cared.
That's the problem, yeah.
Yeah. And so these systems are all running. This is just at the very base level of how do you guard yourself against external judgments and manipulation. And if you can have the awareness and the armor that's set up to go like, you're doing a judgment against me. I see what you're doing. If you can catch the person in the act, you no longer have to be defensive over the judgment itself because you can catch the judge. And once you catch the judge, I don't have to worry about that because I see your intention seems to be to alter me, change me, manipulate me, control me. There's something you're doing here and I caught you. And when you catch them, they don't like that very much. Because then they'll get even meaner or more controlling and you'll start seeing more manipulative or aggressive behavior because they don't have control of you. And so they'll try and amp it up, which just shows that I really don't have to do very much from this point because you really do have nothing and you're trying to take everything. And the only way you can take it is if I surrender it, is if I give it to you.
Yes.
Otherwise, you got nothing. And I'll just keep resending those offers. I don't need that offer. No, take it off.
Let me catch up with you, but like, you know, the stuff, the thing is like you use different language, but everything you were showing and that map was brilliant because when you zeroed in on the motivation and doubt, I think my key differentiator compared to other therapists or coaches or whatever you want to call us, is my motivational attitude. So I'll come at all my clients with a motivational attitude. So I start from the get-go. I start from, right, whatever it is you need to do, I'm going to help you do it. Okay? It's not for me to tell you, you see judgment. It's not for me to tell you what to do. And you can almost see the relief in their eyes when they hear that, you know? Because like you said, the defense against judgment, a lot of these kids, and when I say kids, I'm talking about anyone under 30 because they're developing quite late these days. So you've got like 25-year-olds, like the person I saw this morning, 25 years old, has very little ego defense. Okay. Why? I don't know. All I know is I can help him with it right now. You know, to go digging around in the past is a researcher's job. He can go and dig around in the past, what caused this and what was the factors and the etiology and all that stuff. Fine. Okay. There might be a dysfunctional marriage. There might be some health issues. There are some things that came up with him that I'm like, okay, well, it's probably that, or that. Okay. But the fact is, it doesn't matter anymore. If he's basically functional, I can work with him. And you know what, Rick? Some of these kids, and I'm talking about boys and girls, it's not just boys that I deal with, but some of these kids, I mean, my youngest client is 13, eh? These people change within weeks. Why? Mostly because they get motivation from me, because I take away the judgment. Because my whole attitude is, you are you, and I want you to be you in the world, but I want you to be a better you. I want you to look forward to being a better you in the future, whatever that is, you know? I mean, there's like someone said to me the other day, okay, but who's to judge what is better and what is not better? And I'm like, well, look, there are some factors that when you look at the outcome, you can say, well, this is a positive and this is a negative outcome, you know? So I love what you said, you know, the identity around loss. Oh my God, if I'm going to share this with my network, they're going to love that because there is the detransitioners talk about a total loss of identity. Okay. So the person they recognize now, that person is gone forever. Okay, there's a grief involved in that. All right. So I'm not sure if that's exactly what you meant, but there is a loss of identity. And in a way, that's a natural process where we leave the child behind. Okay. So the mistake is what some people are doing is they regress to childlike thinking, or because, of course, if you become more childlike, then someone will become more motherlike, and someone else will become more nurturing and caring and whatever. That tends to be what happens. But of course, it's a very short-term solution, And also just to catch up with you, the way you said it offers nothing. The people that offer nothing, I'm afraid sometimes are the parents or a parent. Okay. And this relates to, I remember we did bring it up last year, the drama triangle. This relates to the drama triangle because you've got the persecutor, you've got the savior, and you've got the victim. Okay. And what a lot of, I see trans as an ideology. So what trans ideology is designed to do is to set up the triangle. And unfortunately, the parents fall for it. Okay. So exactly what you're saying. They apply judgments. As soon as they fall for it, the triangle is established. The victim is rewarded for being a victim in the Western culture that we have right now. So you've got 16-year-olds talking about having a disability because they're trans. I mean, this is actually what's happening out there. They say they're disabled because they're trans.
It's such a nasty curse that's getting done right now for that too, because it falls in line with Munchausen by proxy syndrome, and this is where like the parents will purposely corrupt the belief system of a child to believe there's something wrong with the child that's a disability, or there's something wrong with my kid, so that way they can somehow seem heroic by the disability of their child. Like, look, our kid is going through this terrible trauma, which you created.
Terrible.
Like, that kid was never going through that, but I created it for my child. And now my child, and this is the dangerous part to it, believes that they are born a mistake.
Yes.
You're born wrong. You're wrong. You were born wrong. God fucked up with you. You were born incorrectly.
Yeah.
And that right there, and this is why it's so concerning, because I have worked with transgender people. Like, the thing that's concerning is that when you're working with someone like that it's almost a 50% suicide rate just because I am born as a mistake. There's something wrong with me, and destroying that belief system is necessary whenever I work with people. It's because it's not correct. It's a judgment that got corrupted into shame by people who wanted to control by saying you're bad for what you are. And that's that shame you're talking about. But what's scary to me is a 50% like suicide rate is higher than slavery. It's higher than Holocaust survivors. Like, that's a very scary number to say. How important is it for somebody to have like a solid foundation for their identity? How important is identity when it comes to our existence? And it turns out it's a coin toss how essential it is that like this would kill me. This has a very high death rate if you don't catch these belief systems, and that's scary to me.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Warrior, thank you so much for being a part of the information that we have. And you're part of our story as we are a part of yours. It's very much an honor to be able to connect with each other. If you want to know more, or you want to get started with working with me or working with our warriors so that you can begin your path to authenticity, strength, leadership, and accountability, this is the way. Together, we are way stronger. Now you get to choose. Do you go forward or keep doing what you've always done? If you stay where you're at, hey, click on some of the stuff and follow what it is. We got motivational stuff. We've got podcasts. We've got more things. Just subscribe and do the stuff, and we'll keep you updated. But if you want to start going in, start jumping into what our programs offer and start your journey and being the hero in your own story.
Can I make I want to add to what you're saying, just because this 50% suicide rate is a very contentious statement. I don't know if you'll agree with this, but what I would say is the problem is when we talk about the death rate of a mental illness, okay, that's very specific language. So what exactly they die of gets a bit complicated. So the thing is with the trans identity is it's a massive umbrella that covers anorexia, covers depression, ADHD, autism, blah, 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 blah. Okay?
Anxiety, bipolar disorder. Yeah,
anxiety, the substance abuse, trauma, there'll be all sorts of things that'll be covered by that. So I just want, Rick, if you don't mind me just putting this technical thing is because I think it's a little bit misleading to say that there's a 50% death rate in trans people, okay? Because you have to analyze exactly what that is. So I just want to be careful there. Because
fair enough. No, because there is a compounding of other issues that seem to feed this, and this is also multiple judgments. And I will count diagnosis as judgment. Like if you think about, you see somebody who gets a diagnosis and then they start behaving like their diagnosis.
Yes,
that's why there's certain terminologies today that I actually go against pretty aggressively, and I will debate people on. Like
I do as well. Most of them,
like attachment disorders. I'm like, that's not a real thing.
Yeah,
like I studied that shit. I'm like, this is all made up. This is not a thing. That doesn't work like that. But when people believe that the way that they connect or the way they attach is corrupted, that means they will sabotage every dynamic that they have because they believe they have a thing. And they go, well, it's not my fault. It's because I have anxious attachment disorder. I'm like, anxiety is just fear amplified, which means things that aren't really happening, that you can create abstract, battles, which is a superpower, not a disability, by the way. And then being able to take that and say, well, that's why I can't connect to you because I freak out too much. They'll make sure they freak out too much so that way they can't connect because they have a belief system on a diagnosis that probably came from someone's fucking TikTok.
Can I throw something in there?
Yeah, for sure.
TikTok. Please don't even bring up TikTok. God. I'm laughing because you sound like me now. A couple of my clients, okay, let me explain. Okay, so give me a minute. A couple of my clients, I've had to tell them, you guys have, maybe the husband has avoidant attachment style. Okay. Notice I didn't say disorder. Okay. And then the wife has maybe anxious attachment style. Okay. What I follow that up with immediately is, all I'm doing now is describing the way you two are interacting. Okay. And I'm laughing because I've had some intense sessions with a married couple. I hope they're watching this. You know who you are. Which have been quite liberating, I hope, for everybody, because I can say you have an avoidant attachment style, but I'm not saying that you have a right to have an avoidant attachment style. That's the problem. I'm describing your attachment style and how unhealthy it is. Okay. But when you acknowledge, okay, my style of dealing with conflict in this relationship is to avoid, okay, which is quite common with men. I think there is a little bit of commonality in the sexes, okay, in the way they will attach. I think, but there is research. So just for the technical sake of it, there is research that has shown that attachment style is a real thing, but it's not a syndrome. It's not a disorder.
Correct.
So we've got to be very careful. And I'm really glad you brought that up because there's a lot of misinformation.
Calling it a disorder or saying this is a reason why I can't do it is not a real thing. But how do we connect and how do we attach is a real thing.
Yes.
So I'm with you there. And that's why I'm glad that you're saying let's be specific, because it does matter. You are correct. When I'm saying you have a disorder, that doesn't exist. That's bullshit. That's a belief system that comes in that corrupts you. But Rick, how do we connect? That's a real thing.
Yeah, when I was right up until the age of 33, I'm 51 now, okay? Mm-hmm. Right up until the age of 33, I was a highly avoidant, anxious attachment. All of them, whatever all of them is, I was all of them.
All of them, yeah.
All of them. Alcoholic, avoidant, aggressive, the works. Okay. And then, you mentioned it earlier, when the polarity reverses. Okay. You said there's a switch that happens when we were looking at the map. The switch happened with me where I finally realized, oh, I need to actually make an effort to get people to like me. They're not obligated to like me. You need to be worthy of other people's love and affection and attention and time, and then the world is your oyster.
Correct.
I mean, it's an exponential growth. It's not a subtle change. But the way I word it is the polarity gets reversed. Okay, it's this expectation of the external world, like you were talking about earlier. The external world is going to provide for you. It's going to feed your ego. No, it's not. You have to do something. You have to interact with it, and based on your interaction, yes, you will get rewards. There's another little element about this concept that we're talking about now, about the external and the internal. With anorexics, a lot of men that are like gymming too much have got orthorexia. And then, of course, with trans people, what they're doing very often, in most cases, are they've internalized the anxiety and the this term we use so easily these days, dysphoria. Okay, dysphoria is just the opposite of euphoria. All right, so dysphoria can be anything. Yeah. Nowadays, it's been linked, it's been attached, it's been bound to gender. Okay, and that's misleading, because you can have dysphoria about a lot of things.
Anything.
For example, I think you remember I was anorexic for 7 years when I was much younger, and what I was doing at the time was I was internalizing the anxiety, so I was interrogating my body to provide the answer of what the meaning of my life is, okay? Which I think is it's quite a natural way to do things, but you need to learn the lesson quickly that that's not how you learn the lesson. That's not how you learn the meaning of life, okay? The meaning of your life comes from interrogating the world, which is what you and I do.
Because you have to go inward too, because your purpose is inside. And people don't understand that journey very much.
I think you've got to do it first. Yes.
Yeah, because you find your purpose on the journey. You'll start off with a why that's strong enough to go, but you find yourself as you go. Agree, yeah. As you climb, you'll go, I'm starting to figure me out because I'm doing things that challenge me. I'm doing things that, like you were talking about, these circumstances, like the people blame the world or blame these people or blame them, where the accountability is being pushed outwards as though somehow I become an authority to allocate fault. And that's a very interesting ego system that's working, because everything's happening to me is the belief system that you're talking about. And without the ability to convert that into, this has happened for me to learn or grow or understand, which is anything from the past, really, is the past that you went through is a teacher, not a punishment. Did you learn? Because the only way it's a mistake is if you didn't learn from it, because you'll probably repeat it until you get it. And so that's where I'm with you, where, like, how Epictetus said, your circumstances do not define you. They reveal you to yourself.
Yes.
And you'll find you when you start paying attention to what's going on here. How did you handle that? Did you blame everybody else? That's you. Did you think that this is happening to you and for you? You're a victim. That's how you process. Did you learn from this and grow from this? That's also you too. Did you help others from what it is that you went through? That shows who you are. Like the way we handle things reveals us to ourselves. And this is where you're watching these people. I really like that couple. You talked about your avoidance style. I think it's really funny. I go even simpler with those couples. I'm like, well, the reason he won't talk to you and the reason that you're so anxious is because neither of you are safe to talk to.
Yes.
If you were able to process truth without control, well, they'd be back to sharing with you again, like you guys used to before you got married.
Yeah. Yeah.
The reason you got married is it used to be like, yeah, I'm going through some tough things. And you're like, well, let me hear about it. I can listen for you. Before it turns into, now I own you, so you have to do it my way. And I'm like, that kills love. That doesn't connect. And that means anytime that we react when somebody tells us truth, we teach that person to lie. And this is where people don't want to take accountability. Where if you were like, hey, Rick, I want to share something that's really important. I'm like, you're a fucking asshole for that. Fuck you, you piece of shit. Fuck off. You need to shut the fuck up. And I start freaking out. And the more I freak out, the more you go, whenever I share truth with this guy, he freaks out on me. So I'm not going to share with him because he goes into blame, shame, judgment, punishment. He's going to try and make me feel bad because they can't handle information. So I won't give them information. They can't seem to handle it. So then he becomes avoidant, and then she becomes anxious because she's making up all the things she thinks he's thinking, and he can't share with her because she'll freak out. That's that couple.
Yeah.
And I'm like, neither of you are even safe to talk to because you can't deal with truth.
So that I mean, that's a spot on, because literally what I do with them, I mean, I must be clear, like I deal with multiple families, systems, because we're trying to deal with the whatever it is. There'll be different issues, but I prefer to take a system approach when they're willing, because obviously that involves
they have to be
sessions with each member of the family and that kind of thing. But if the parent, for example, comes to me about their child and wants me to fix their child, it's not that simple. Like, I need you to cooperate. I need changes to happen in the family. And that means that, just to go back to your point about them not trusting each other, I become then and this is a very awkward position. And if any of my clients are listening to this, that I say this often. You've put me in a very awkward position. I want them to be aware. You see, shame. I want them to be aware. You have put me in an awkward position. You've brought me into this situation. You're saying, okay, we'll pay you to resolve this situation, but you're forcing me to address the problem. So what's going to happen is I'm going to mention the problem, and you're both going to freak out because that's what you've been doing before I came along.
Correct.
So you can't now decide you're going to shoot the messenger, because I'm the one that's being truthful. Like you said, they don't want to be truthful to each other. So now my job is to say, well, you know what, Rick, maybe you are an asshole sometimes.
It happens.
And then the dad is like, well, how dare you speak to me like that? I mean, I've never actually had that situation. Obviously, I'm much more tactful about these things.
I'll say it.
But likewise, I will say to the partner, I will say, well, the way you approach, I think what often happens, Rick, honestly, people forget that we have sex-based responses to crisis. And women will become more anxious in crisis, and men will become more stoic, we say. Okay, but that can be interpreted as avoidant.
It is. Both of them do the same thing. Is because one's not. They deal with a different thing. I'm going to show you like the core umbrella to all six is under really the denial element of two. In every single group I've ever worked with women, and every group with men I've ever worked with, it seems to be the same system. Women deny reality and truth. Men deny emotion and feelings. Yeah, so what's being suppressed, what gets suppressed? Now, I've done whole trainings on women when it comes to comparison curses put on by other women and external validation becoming where their worth comes from, means that who I am is now inherently not good enough. So they'll need makeup or designer bags or status or power. They'll need something to go like, look, I'm good enough, but it's all external. And that means it's a comparison thing, which used to be like, county or city, and now it's global, and that's very difficult to deal with. So burden of beauty and burden of performance are being stacked on women, where authenticity is now shamed. And so women cannot be themselves without being not good enough. Look at a mom who says, I want to be a traditional mom, and how shamed she is. She's like, no, I just want to be, I feel called to be a great mother. And that's a very honorable and noble position. And they're like, no, you're bad. And so this is where, remember the belief system glasses, women are bad if they want to be good moms. And you're like, well, she should be a good mom and a business owner and a CrossFit champion and a world-class builder. And she needs to do this. And she needs to be a supermodel. And she needs to do this. And you're like, no, she just wants to be a great mom and good wife. And she likes the traditional role that feels authentic to her. It's like her authenticity should be shamed. And then guys are shamed for their feelings. And it's going to be one way or the other today. So anger is now bad. And so guys will go into sadness, but they won't get empathy for sadness. And so then they're just exiled, rejected, and thrown away because they look weak. And guys who are like, oh, I saw that guy get treated like that for looking weak. So fuck that. I'm going to go into anger, because anger at least looks confident. It looks like I'm loud, so I know what I want. And so at least gives an illusion of confidence, even though I'm just converting sadness to anger. And now anger is how I cry.
Good point.
And so now when a guy is crying and he's converted sadness to anger, he's just a fucking asshole. So fuck him. And if a guy is converting anger into sadness because he doesn't want to be that guy and be aggressive and seen that way, now he's just weak and pathetic, which means every emotion a guy has isn't that guy must be hurting. It's let's judge him into submission, which is why these guys are like, I got nothing. I can't have a human emotion, so I have to suppress everything because I have to be stoic. Otherwise, I am rejected outright. There is no win because if I'm angry, I'm an asshole. And if I'm sad, I'm weak. Either way, I'm unwanted. And this is where they go, I got nowhere. I got nothing. This is why it's important for the men's.
Safer to feel nothing.
It becomes the only option to be included. Remember, because approval and belonging is a core human need. We're a pack animal. We're a herd animal. And so we have to belong somewhere. And if there's things that I will do that will get me exiled or excluded or isolated or thrown away or, removed, I'm not included anymore. I don't want that. And so men and women will do an adaptability system based on denial, which is like wear a mask, change who I am, alter my behavior to fit in with the people who will be the most judgmental. That's a very important sentence. I will change me to match whoever the most alpha, judgmental, mean girl or dickhead jock or whatever the dude is or the girl is. That would be like, that's the person who I have to make sure I don't get on their bad side because they'll kick me out. You have to change now. You have to. This is where the masks that people wear, that's denial. Well, guys will deny their humanity and become the rock for their family. I got to be the rock when there's a death. I got to be the rock for everybody because I'm the stoic one, right? And I'm like, well, what feelings do rocks have?
None, exactly.
There's no feelings for rocks. And then women, there's no block on their emotional outbursts. They can be as reckless as they want because there's no consequence because, like you said, women stop checking women. And so now what used to be vilified is now glorified. And that's a very weird behavior because it actually ends up making women lose in the end here. There's a reason why women checked women because like that's not going to be good in the long run. And now it's starting to manifest where like, ladies, you're losing to yourselves. Like you're not even seeing it right now. It's not going well. And so when women are leading, they're not showing empathy and they're not showing compassion for men. And so that's not a leader because leaders can't be subjectively empathetic. They have to consider the pack. And if they have only selective members that I don't care about that one. I don't care about that one. That's not the leader. That's a bad boss is what that is. They want to be a boss babe. No, that's a bad boss. That's what that is. Somebody who doesn't give a shit about certain members is not a good leader.
Yeah.
And so this is where you're watching the behavior happening right now where it's getting pretty loud to see these circumstances. You're getting very loud to see the judgments. You're getting very loud to see which umbrellas it is that people are using as their survival system. And it's all in the loss system, by the way. This is all loss of identity, loss of self, loss of confidence, loss of worth, loss. There's a identity death here. And that's why I have to wear a mask. That's why I have to wear makeup. That's why I have to look different. That's why I have to be jacked. That's why I have to go into distractions because I'm hiding and pushing down something that hurts so fucking bad that I can't let you see that because otherwise I won't fit in anymore. It's the base level. So it's denial is the main thing. People are all just gimping by men are suppressing their humanity. Women are suppressing reality and truth. They can't handle it. And so now nobody can talk to each other because nobody's safe. Guys can't share their feelings because women judge and girls can't be authentic or accountable because that would make them not good anymore. Fucked.
Yeah.
It's loud to me. I'm like, you're all doing the same damn thing. Everyone's doing the same thing. You think you're all unique doing the same shit. But this is everybody's system if you're untrained. If you don't know what to look for, everyone's just mostly lying to themselves all day long. That's denial, which means if
I have to agree with you. Yeah, it's that's one of the most common things I see is this self-denial. And one of the most common things I hear from I'm very fortunate that people refer me to their friends or to other support groups or whatever. But that's one of the things they say is, oh, you can go speak to this guy, Angelo, because he's going to be straight with you. And because, well, what is being straight? It's being honest and direct. There's no denial, So I'm going to assess the situation carefully. I mean, I'm not going to just blurt out the first thing that comes to my mind, because those initial judgments are incorrect, So I obviously take time to assess things properly. But then when I eventually what I often do is I wait until I've had like 2 or 3 signals that this is the problem. Okay, that whatever it is, it's the husband's being avoidant, or maybe the child is deflecting maturity. That this is something that's quite common these days. Is the younger people are, and when I say younger, I mean even up to 25 years old. They're trying to delay and deflect adulthood. That's a super big problem with Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Although I must say, I'm getting a sense from some of them that they've cottoned on to this.
They have.
And
we've got
starting to say, well,
our girls are catching this shit, and we talk about it, but our girls are like, we're not doing that. We're going to be us.
Yeah,
we're going to be. Yeah. You guys fucked that up. There's no doubt that our generation is not doing a good job. There's no question. We're looking at this and going, everything's on fire. I don't think this is working.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're right. The young kids, like the young teenagers, those who aren't falling, those are who aren't, like you said, vulnerable with their self-worth or confidence, which comes from, like you said, it's the influences. The scariest thing is, like, while parents don't know how to be good parents because, well, the way to make a kid isn't making you a good parent. These things are raising kids. And this is a problem. This thing becomes, how do I raise my child? And holding your cell phone, this is what I got, or a tablet, and you give this to a kid at a young age, the influences that they'll start getting now make it so that it'll subtly start changing their belief system around their authenticity of what is regular, what is normal.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I think, so some people listening to this might be thinking, oh, this is the hype or the scaremongering, the fear-mongering around social media and devices. Okay, but guys, there is overwhelming evidence that this is a problem. Okay, we're talking about people get fixated. They say, oh, well, there's evidence that being social on your digital platforms has positive effects. Yes, that's true, but not when, like some of the kids I deal with, they've got a secret device. They're staying up till 5 a.m. on a weekday repeatedly, and then going to school completely exhausted and overly emotional. And what happens is they go to school and the teachers go, oh, this child is autistic. Okay. And what I discover is that the child has a secret device, is sitting up. Sometimes it's even using the devices the parents do know about. But often it's a secret device, or there's just no control on devices, and they're sitting up till a point of utter exhaustion, which is 3, 4, 5 in the morning. I'm talking about 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, okay? And then they go to school and they're completely emotionally dysfunctional, dysregulated. Why? Because their brain is fried. Guys, your brain cannot function like this. So to say that the device doesn't have this kind of power is unbelievably naive. There's basements full of tech engineers that are working on how to keep your children locked to their devices. And you think you're smarter than them? Well, good luck with that.
Even if you watch The Social Dilemma, like even the guys who created these tech engineers are like, we got to be honest, this thing got away. They got away from us a lot. We can't control this thing. This thing got away from us a long time ago. The guy who created Pinterest is like, we can't use Pinterest because the algorithm that we created is way more advanced than we are. This thing is way ahead of us now, and this will get you. This will get you hooked. That's the game, though. Yeah. That's the addiction. Is if you're using comparison from external sources to make it so that my approval or my belonging or my worth, I think that's the real question of where does your worth come from? I think that's the question.
Exactly.
Where does your worth come from? And if the answer is from online attention, from likes, from follows, from subscribes, from, share buttons, whatever it is, if it's an external source, where your worth comes from now is only going to be the approval and attention from people who don't know you. And this is an interesting system because because now you become slave. This is an interesting thought. I think I talked about this on a different episode before, or even the very concept of following somebody online, Instagram or whatever. There's very specific terms that are used. Follow. I'm going to follow. I'm a follower. I follow.
Follower.
And if I'm a follower, well, what is the person who makes the content? Well, that's a content creator. So I'm following the creator.
Exactly.
Do you see the terminology I'm using right now? I'm following the creator. And if I am to be loved, and I am to be approved or acknowledged or good enough, the likes and follows, like the more that I have to become the creator, and the more I create, the more I try to get followers to be able to follow, because that shows my worth. And there's a trick happening here where I'm watching all of my value comes from something that's superficial. It's make believe. It's based on approval. Now, at first, they may be my followers and I'm the creator. But once I become addicted to the need for their likes and their follows and I need that, then I'll start doing anything to alter myself to get it, which makes me go from creator to slave.
You submit.
I am now a slave to my followers. Now their demands become my purpose, and I become slave to whatever it is that they tell me to do. And at this point, they'll do anything. They'll embarrass themselves. They'll look foolish. They'll expose themselves. They'll be sexual. They'll do anything to make it so that my likes and my follows stay strong, no matter what that would be, which means I shall compromise any ounce of authenticity and truth of self to make sure that I am approved of by people who don't even know me. What an interesting curse to live under.
Let me say, Rick, I love talking to you. We should talk more often. But anyway, I've been saying my problem, I might have mentioned this last year, but I started my work life. My first real job was in advertising when I was 19 years old. Okay. And in advertising, I saw, first I learned that advertising was created by psychologists, okay? John Watson and B.F. Skinner, basically, the behaviorists, okay? I don't think they were deliberately evil men, but when you look at what they did, it was kind of evil.
Some of Skinner's experiments were a little fucked.
Yes. So behaviorism has a lot of problems. Okay. So what I just for the technical sake, what I use is the biopsychosocial approach, not the behaviorist approach. But coming from advertising, where the blinkers fell off one day after 3 years, I was in advertising for 3 years, but the blinkers fell off one day, and I was like, oh my God, I'm part of the machine, which is a consumer-based society. And it horrified me because I was like, how did that happen? So that sort of triggered a whole bunch of other things. But what I've been saying, having studied psychology formally now, is that we've created a society where you are consumed, and I know I sound like I'm paraphrasing what you just said, but this is my version, is you are valued by how much you consume. Okay, so your worth, like you said, you use the word worth, and I said, your value is in, we literally do it to each other. How many followers do you have? What car do you drive? Et cetera, et cetera. It just goes on and on and on, So you're valued, we measure each other. So we must pay attention to the fact that we do it to each other for how much you're consuming instead of how much you're creating. Okay, now let me explain that a little bit as well. Because so just remember, I grew up in Africa. I grew up in South Africa, but it's still Africa, okay? And I didn't realize, but I was absorbing a slightly different culture. Okay. In African culture, okay, let me just preface that with, from my perspective as a white man who's Italian, who grew up in Africa. Okay. I'm not African, all right? Obviously. So,
I mean,
but from my perspective,
technically you are. If you grew up in Africa, that's African.
yes. Well, I suppose, let me say I'm not black. Okay.
If you were born in Egypt, that's Africa.
You're African, yes. And I certainly, now that I live in Sweden now, but I certainly realize that I'm not a typical Westerner, that's for sure, okay? Because I've got certain value-based systems, okay, that I take from partly from my Italian heritage and partly from African culture, which was a man's role is to provide and protect, okay? This is traditional masculinity, as it turns out, okay? I later discovered. And also, in Africa, if you're not contributing, which means creating, and I mean in the real sense, I'm not talking about digital garbage online, okay? I'm talking about actually creating something meaningful. If you're not creating, well then, people won't condemn you, but they won't value you, all right? So now, if I can just throw in here while we're on it, just keep in mind that women have a superpower, which is they can create life, all right? Men are constantly in a state of anxiety, as opposed to women, an underlying anxiety. Okay, this is where the existentialism comes in. I don't know if you remember, but I practice existentialism. That men don't have the power to create life. We can contribute to life, but we don't create life. So men are obligated to constantly be pursuing creation, creativity, productivity, okay, which is often why men are the ones that are entrepreneurs, and we set up businesses, we build things, et cetera, et cetera. I thought you were going to chime in there.
Well, I was, but just because I interrupt a lot. But we're built for progress.
No, go for it.
Men are built for progress. We're built for that. And there is purpose for it. That's why we're the more logical and women are more emotional. It's not screwed up. It's not wrong. There's a reason. We have to be built for progress because men are valued based on their contribution or service. That's why the first time you meet a guy to guy, you go, hey, good to meet you, Angelo. What do you do?
What do you do? 100%.
That's the first question is like, why? Because that's going to go, hey, this is my first interaction or assessment of your value that you contribute. So if I go like, oh, I'm a video game content creator, but I don't have very many followers, so I don't really make much money on it, versus I'm a doctor or I am a CEO or I am a, whatever philanthropist, like depending on what the answer would be, you're going to be like, okay, I at least have gotten at least a base
100%.
level contribution 100%. Of this guy's this assessment of worth. It's partially superficial, and it's obviously just a very surface level understanding of the human, but it's the first question guys do to guys. It's the first question. So what do you do, man? Like, that's the first question. And very rarely, think about this too. If I said, so what do you do? Your first question isn't going to be your favorite. Your first answer is not your favorite hobby. It's not going to be like, oh, I love golfing. I love, jet skiing. You don't talk about your favorite. I collect these things. You're like, no. What do you do for work? And I'd have to correct you because I need to go to value assessment, not enjoyment. You see, I'm doing it now. This is just how people interact. So you're not wrong when the societal measurement is subconsciously there, but also women have hypergamy. And this is something that's gotten very corrupted these days, which needs to get balanced back out again. It's because they're calling a high value man based off of superficial points again. No different than me going, so what do you do? Women will go, what do you do? So I can assess what I get. And this is like, oh, if you're a doctor, that's very different than if you're in school. Well, what are you in school for is going to become a big thing I need to assess then. I'm in school for ice cream making. You're like, you're going to have your own ice cream business? No, I just like ice cream. You're like, not very high potential on this one. Or like, I like to be in the orchestra and I'm the lead French horn. And you're like, probably not going to be as good as doctor. I'm going to go with that one, and so there's a value assessment for potential, but women aren't going off of values like loyalty, honor, kindness, generosity, strength, commitment, disagreeableness. They're not doing values. They're going, he's over 6 feet tall. He's got a six pack and he's six figures. That's my guy. I'm like, Those are all superficial. Those aren't values. And this is why it's getting corrupted, is
they're
because
proxies.
right. And it's no different than going like, this must be a good woman. She's got a pretty face, big boobs, and nice butt. So that's a good woman. It's like, those are also superficial. That's not who she is.
Yeah.
That's not a values.
Yeah.
Those are superficial value, which means if she likes him for his money and his height, and he likes her for her body, we have a transactional relationship. No wonder they're failing. Because where does your worth come from is only something that is superficial, or in this case, a depreciating asset, which is a very interesting thing.
Look at what we've done here. Like, talking about the external sources of value. That is everything you've just said. Is when the society has been flipped.
Correct.
Again, that polarity thing that I talk about. When the polarity has been flipped, is okay. Then we're looking for the value in the other person, instead of saying, "I know my value. I know my value." Okay, so my value. I can say this because when I met my wife, I was a different man. Yes. At 33, I met my wife. I knew my value. I needed to see if she could see my value.
Or at least your potential value.
And my potential as well, of course.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. I don't want to sound arrogant, because I was like I think most men are. We are quite ambitious. Again, like I said, we're driven to constantly create.
Yes.
Okay. That's why you'll get men that work right up until they're like 83 years old. Whereas women are like, okay, I've done my job. I'm gonna chill, unless they get reanimated by some other cause or whatever. Obviously. But that external sources of worth, I just think there's something interesting about this because, and I'm being very general, obviously, but a woman creates life with her body, and her child becomes the external source of her worth. Okay, a man has to go and build a building. He builds a bridge. He builds a building. He builds a car. He creates a business, like I did. For those who don't know me, I had my own business for 21 years before I studied psychology. Okay. I was very proud. That's why I say I'm happy to say I am a self-actualized, very, what's the word? I've forgotten the word now. A self-actualized, autonomous human being. Okay. I don't, it sounds like I'm bragging, but guys, I'm 51. Okay. I've earned it. Okay.
Well, it's not bragging. I think people would call it arrogance when it's really competence.
Yeah.
You're capable. Yeah. I know how to do that. I am that. It's not an ego thing. It's objective. That's what I am.
Yeah.
I am independently able to take care of my own self. Like I'm autonomous. I'm good.
Exactly. And I mean, what if anyone's sort of analyzing this, what I'm very happy to say as well, like I said earlier, is a lot of this only clicked when I was like 33. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I don't want people to think that I was sort of swanning around thinking I'm God's gift my whole life. I really was. It was the opposite. But once I realized, I'm doing it wrong.
Yes.
Then I started doing it the right way around, and I got better and better and better at it. And I would say that the reason why I could meet someone as amazing as my wife is because she herself was a self-actualizing. I agree with you. Self-actualizing. It's a process. She was a self-actualizing person, and she wanted to be with someone who's going to be on the same mission.
That's a very important sentence. Like, this is where people, this is where we goof up, because she was going into a womanhood. You guys were in a thought of reciprocity, which means we are both actively going to grow together. And our goal as a relationship is for it to be better to be with each other than not to be with each other, which I think many people forget that's what a relationship is supposed to be. But there's something that's happened with the stunting of growth, as you mentioned before, with these new generations, where there is a stunt in growth where now 30 is the same as how 20 used to be 50 years ago. We're like, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. I'm like, dude, you're 30. You're just starting. It's getting later and later and later. And this is where I'm noticing the difference between boys and girls is boys and girls are takers. They try to get. What's for me? For me. What about me? What about me? What about me? And whenever I see somebody go, hey, this person's suffering, and they're suffering, what about my suffering? I'm like, boy or girl. This is childlike behavior. They're trying to get. I need to conquest. I need to take. I need to procure. I need to get mine. Get me, 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 me. That's boy and girl behavior. Men and women behavior is, how can I give? How can I serve? How can I build? How can I encourage? How can I support? How can I make that better for you? And men and women are givers. Boys and girls are takers. Now we're seeing more and more people who are maybe old, but aren't mature. And I say, just because you have grown doesn't mean you have grown, or just because someone is grown doesn't mean they have grown. They could be 50 years old and still a boy, 50 years old and still a girl. I'm still taking and wondering, why is life not being kind to me? Why is life still doing this to me? And you're like, you never evolved. You never went from boy to man or girl to woman. You never went from taker to giver. You didn't change over. And that's why your relationship's able to be successful. Rick, she's giving and you're giving.
If you think about what you're saying, if you never take responsibility, then nothing's ever your fault.
The accountability is definitely rule number one. Without accountability,
like you were saying earlier,
you can't have a relationship that would go, I want it to be better for you, Angelo. So that's my purpose. And this is like, being with me is better than not being with me. And a girl or a boy will not have that thought. It'll be, being with you means you give something and take care of me. Instead of being together means I make it better for you as you make it better for me. Together is better, instead of it's only better when you get better and give it to me. And that's where you'll have a man with a girl or a woman with a boy. And they're not catching, there's no growth mindset. Now you and your wife were both like, we're both in growth mindset. And you're like, good, now we can be a rocket ship of encouragement to each other to propel forward. But if they don't understand what we just said right there, there's a lot of people trying to make it work with somebody who never grew up.
100%. 100%. I'm struggling to not laugh more about that, because it's a bit awkward for my wife and I, because we make friends with people and then immediately we start hearing about the difficulties they're having in their marriage. And both of us are like, this is really weird, because I'm like, why did you get married? Like,
it's a good question.
What were you thinking? Maybe why did you get married to that person? Okay. I think a lot of people can make a mistake. But I don't know what the requirement should be, but you should be mature. You should be able to feed your own ego before you depend on someone else to do that for you.
Isn't it interesting how many times the answer is, I didn't want to be alone?
Yeah.
That's an interesting response. It's like, wait a second, you locked them down so that way they don't leave you, which is more like trapping than healthy growing relationship.
And it implies that anyone would do.
Yeah. And they also, when I see that behavior of fear of loss is the reason for connection. I don't want to be abandoned. I don't want to be left. I don't want to feel unwanted or unneeded. So I got to lock you down so that way you don't leave me. The entire connection system is based on something negative. And that means if it's a fear-based connection, like I'm afraid, which I guess would be the technical anxious connection or anxious attachment, I'm afraid of losing you. That's why I need to marry you. So that way you can't leave me. But the problem is, and this is where it becomes obviously loud, is if you're built for progress to create safety security for your woman, as men, we need to create safety security. So when a woman says, I need space, that doesn't mean, well, then get out there and go get your own space. It means, no, I'll create a space where you're safe so that way you have space. I'll let you be in the space that I've created that is safe. Mind, heart, body, spirit. I'll create a safe space. Now you have space. Make that warm and fuzzy and work on your shit. I don't have to fix your shit for you, but I can make it so you're safe while you work on yours. Yeah. This is where men don't understand. We're builders. We create. We do that. That's what we do. Yeah. Women are terrible at structure building. I'll debate any of them on it. They don't build structure well. They don't. That's why the saying, men will build a house, women make it a home. Their job is to make inside wonderful. Our job is to make outside stable. That's the job. And if guys are giving women the job to build structure, why do you think they're saying, I'm doing everything? I'm doing everything. Even if you have 3 walls up and she's just got 1, she'll still think she's doing everything. Men don't understand this element of it. And we're choosing partners that don't get it. we're choosing people who like don't get it. And this is why we're watching struggle all the time, because what does it mean to be safe to somebody, especially somebody who's here to take, somebody who wants to just give me mine, give me mine, give me mine. We're trying to make it work with the wrong mentality. There's no criteria anymore of, well, is this a good woman, good man? It's, I don't want you to leave me. And so when it's all based on fear, now people will start controlling and or get complacent. It's one of the two. Control or complacency.
Say, like, this stuff about what you said about, what was it? The man creates the home, the woman creates, or the man builds the home and the woman what did you say?
Builds the house, she makes it a home.
She makes it a home. So that's a simplified version, but there's research for people who are interested. There's research that shows that in terms of your sex-based capabilities, your cognitive capacities, men are better at structural systems, okay, at organizational and structural systems. This is, look, we're talking on a bell curve. There's men are over here and women are over here. All right. So there's overlap, obviously, guys, with everything. There's overlap with the sexes, but generally speaking, men are the builders. We are the systemizers, and the women fill in all the other things. This is what I say is, again, like, my language is a little bit different, but, the men will create the stuff and the women will create the life. But what we forget is that the reason men create the building is for the family to live in it.
Correct.
Men don't create buildings so that other men can live in the buildings. All right?
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
It's a service concept.
We do things for each other.
Yeah. It's to serve. I built this for you to feel safe.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets mixed up, is like where women will think, well, now that it's done, I need to be the boss of the inside. It's like, no. I don't need a boss inside. I need a partner inside. No, I built this for you to feel safe, so you don't have to do that. But your job is also to do. This is where it's getting corrupted for women really bad. They're struggling because women are taught that they have to be the structure builder, the provider, the safety, the security, and they don't do that. That's not their wiring.
Yeah.
And that's why they're highly overwhelmed. If women were meant to do it, why are they getting overwhelmed so easily? It doesn't make sense. Like, that's not built for that. And this is where women are going from love me for who I am to love me for what I provide. And that's not a very good thing for women, because now you got to not only compete with men, and we've been competing with each other for always. And so you have to compete at like a genetic high level, which is exhausting, by the way, because we're wired to do that. That's exhausting to stay in that masculine mindset. And then women are like having to forfeit the actual value. Now, this is where it gets tricky. If it's measure me for what I provide, women are going to struggle in this game because guys aren't looking for that. That's going to be hard. No. So if I was I tell this with the women I talk with businesses and work with business owners, and I'm like, let me just tell you how that doesn't work. If you and I were on a first date and I'm like, so what do you do? And she's like, oh, I am very successful. And I'm like, how much do you make? She's like, I make $150K a year. I'm like, oh, that's so good. What's my cut if I'm with you? And she's like, I don't like that. I'm like, well, if you're the provider, how much of this money that you provide is mine if I'm with you? And they're like, my money is my money. And I'm like, not a provider then. Because men don't have that mechanism to go, if my girl needs money, I say no, because it's my money. No, guys are like, yeah, whatever you need, baby. I got you. Whatever the kids need, take it.
I got you, yeah.
We give. Guys are natural givers. And why are women not converting in? This means they're trying to measure their worth based on men's value, and this makes it so they're low value to good men. This is where women are goofing this up.
Yes.
I'm gonna call it out.
Big mistake.
Is a woman's value comes from the immeasurables or the intangibles, and a men's will be in the invisible measurables. This will mean, like, I make sure the lights are working, the door closes, things are operating correctly, that thing is fixed, the sink is working. I'm going to do the things that are supposed to work. And women are the ones who give the immeasurables, the ones I can't measure: kindness, generosity, encouragement, love, warmth, nurture, empathy, compassion. Like, how do you measure those? Those are all subjective but necessary. And women have been losing the value of what that is, because that's what makes the place warm. But women are trying to be controlling, manipulative, mean, and nagging, and they think that's the same. But this guy who's doing Superman work, I built this thing, I'm a bricklayer, I'm a ditch digger, I'm a pool digger, I do hard work, I'm a window cleaner on a high-rise building, which is a life and death any day job. And that guy is out doing crazy shit that she would never want to do and or can't do. And then coming home feeling like I did some Superman shit today. And what's he want to come home to? Lois Lane. Give me my warmth, my love, my nurture, my compassion. I'm happy my man is home, baby. Good job. Look what we've done today. I want to hear about your day. He wants that. I can't measure that. Those are immeasurables. And yet he comes home to kryptonite. Oh, you were gone all day. Why don't you do more chores around the house? I'm here. I'm slaving, which is also, I will challenge all my ladies, because I have a very large men's group, thousands of men. And whenever my guys are stay at home for any amount of time, they're like, I got all the chores done in like an hour and a half. I don't know what she's talking about.
Yeah,
Laundry was push a button. The dishwasher was push a button. There's a Roomba running around here vacuuming.
Yeah.
It didn't take me that long to do it. The kid ate, and then they were done eating, and we just played with the kid, and it was not that hard.
That's what I do.
It's not that hard.
I work from home. My usual desk is behind this wall here. I walk the dog. I do the laundry. It's all machines nowadays anyway.
Right.
Like you said, there's a Roomba. Every now and then I'll do a deeper vacuum or whatever. You know, and my wife gets home and, you know what, Rick, you're going to love this. All I want is a thanks.
Yeah.
That's it.
Words of affirmation, appreciation. That's it.
Okay. Give me a kiss and say thanks. That's it. And then I'm done.
I'm going to give it a little more, because there's a part of us men, there's a part of us guys, ever since we were real little, that wants our girl impressed. There's a piece of us that loves it when our girl goes, wow, I got the best man. And like, damn, baby, you did all this? Look at this. There's a part of us that loves that.
Absolutely.
And so if she comes home and goes, ooh, look what my dude did. You're like, you like that? You like that, baby? Like, there's a part of us that always wants, why little kids like, look, I can jump off of this, or look what I can build, or look what I can pick up, or look what I can do. There's a little Stewart from Mad TV inside of all of us. Like, look what I can do. Yeah. Look what I can do. There's a thing in there. It's been there since we were playing football or whatever we're doing. We're like, hey, did the girl see it? Did she see I just get that goal? Did you see I scored? Did she see I did that run? Did she see? Like, we always want to impress our girl. And that's free for our girls to give. And what's really funny is if you do a good enough job, it gets boring. How funny is that? I just did a training on perfectionism and how perfectionism is a curse. Because if you're always trying to get it perfect, just right, all of the effort not being rewarded, it's only perfect. Whether you hit here or you hit right next to the target, still missed your fail. But then if you start getting real good and hitting the target every time, they'll be impressed a few times. But after it's just, that's what I do.
They stop noticing.
Like, they stop noticing it. Even perfection becomes unnoticed and not impressive. And so the thing that we seek the most from our girl starts becoming unnoticeable. How silly is this? Is that even if you're perfect, you failed. And if you don't hit it just right, you failed. It's a double fail system. This is why the growth system you talked about is the only way it works. We're both growing together. We're both improving together. We both can cheer each other on. We both get excited. We both still go appreciate. And I'm happy you're here, and I'm proud of you, and I love you, and I believe in you. And I'm so happy to be with you, and build your people up. And today they go,
up. I love that.
You're like, oh, did you hit the bullseye again? Of course you did. So boring. Yeah. You're like, it's fucking bullseye. What are you talking about? Like, 1% of guys can do what I just did. And they're like, exactly. I know. You're awesome. Boring. What?
I think it's that familiarity breeds contempt as well, you know?
Yeah.
It's so funny. Easy to forget that your partner is good at something, or is making an effort at something. You know, I think it is quite easy to forget, which is why the relatedness of the individual's relatedness to their environment and their community is so important, because the more you relate to other people, the more you can see, okay, this is how they're dealing with the marriage dilemma, the marriage, the odyssey of marriage, I wanted to pick up on something you said, though. You said earlier we were talking about, I'm jumping to something else now, but you started the conversation. The way women are being sort of led into this idea that they must also be, and I'm glad you added it like that, like it's also successful, they're high earners, have a PhD, et cetera, et cetera. The house must be in their name. Now, let's just dig a little here. Okay, where does that come from? It comes from what I would say is a consumer-based society that is piggybacking on feminism. Okay, now feminism as a concept of gender equality, I've got no problem with. Okay, but the more recent waves of feminism are more radical, and I do have a problem with that. All right, because, and I'm going to explain now why. Because when I talk to females who try to live as men, trans females, biological females who try to live as men, the most common thing they say when they come back to being girls again, to being women again, okay? And notice I said just being women again. I didn't say performing as Kim Kardashian, okay, or looking like Jennifer Lopez. I didn't say that. I said women who come back to just being men. Women, because some of them are lesbian, so they'll come back to being butch women, okay, which is actually fine, all right? There's nothing wrong with that. I don't know what happened to the 90s where we all said you can live as you want, They all say when they come back from this journey, so think about this. They've gone and they've lived as men. Some of them have beards, okay? They have beards. They look like men. They lived as men. They operated in men's spaces. They did male things. They reacted emotionally like men as well, okay? If anyone's interested, I did a whole presentation on this at the GenSpec conference in Lisbon in September, okay? There was a presentation on my findings from the work that I did with detransitioners that I'm still doing, but it was a report on the last work. So it wasn't technically a study. It was more like I got their permission to report on things they were saying, okay? And one of the most common things from the females, I didn't understand feminism. So now that pay attention, now that they've detransitioned, they're admitting, I don't understand feminism. So most of them will say they do not identify as feminists any longer. But before they transitioned, so think about how weird this is. Before they transitioned to live as men, they thought they understood feminism. Okay. So feminists, please explain that to me. All right. They get very upset when I challenge them. They get very upset.
What are some of the belief systems that crumble when they do that?
So they begin with this idea that they must reject beauty standards. Okay. Radical feminist belief. You must reject beauty standards. Fine. I support that to a certain extent. Stop being a consumer. Okay. But that doesn't mean become something else. All right. They accept, or they get sort of, immersed in the idea that men have all the power. Okay. Now, when you're dealing with someone who has a weak ego, they're going to follow the power, just like we talk about follow the money, all right? Without even meaning to, what they do is they're drawn, unwillingly almost, they're drawn to what they were told, this identity that has all the power. So they want to look like you, Rick, okay? Because you've got all this power, don't you, Rick? You've got this army of men that are willing to do your bidding, right? What a lot of bullshit. Okay, so the conceptualization of what a man is formed by feminism, not by men. Okay, because if they talk to men, they start getting a different idea. All right, and that's actually usually when they detransition. They realize, oh, men's lives are actually far more difficult than I realized. All right, I had a moment with one of my trans ideating clients the other day, a female. She said to me, I feel more comfortable around men. All right. And I said to her, but do you understand that as soon as you enter the room, the men's behavior changes? And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, a man knows you might look like You might think you look like a boy, but you're not. Okay? So as soon as a biological female enters the room, the men change their behavior. So what I said to her is, you're getting the best of male behavior, and you think that that's what you want to be. You want to be with more of that, but you're doing that. They're doing that because you're a woman. So you becoming a man, it reverses the process. So now you're going to be incognito. You're going to be mimicking being a man. The men are going to start behaving like some men do, okay? And you're going to suddenly realize, like you said earlier, men are very competitive, okay? So you walk in the room, and Rick, I've had some stories are quite upsetting, because what happens is the very frail trans man, okay, who's a biological woman, is thin, is smaller, is more petite, is weaker, all right, has a rounder face because they're female, but they've got a little beard and they've got, coiffed hairstyle. They've done a bit of gym, they've had a double mastectomy, so they don't have a chest, and they walk into a space where there's men, and the alpha male, okay, I don't really like that term, but the big boss, all right, he turns on the weaker one and he goes, what's your problem? And all of a sudden, they're being bullied. Okay? Well, you thought being with men would be liberating. Turns out it's not. It's difficult being a man, guys.
Mm-hmm. It is. And so they're seeing when you see when they walk in the room, like there's a lot of courtesies disappear from men to men, and also because that's unhealthy alpha. By the way, healthy alpha is natural leader.
Thank you.
Unhealthy alpha is not that, and so that's just loud asshole. Exactly. Because loud asshole doesn't like healthy alpha either.
Exactly.
He doesn't like if somebody's like truly has their shit together, walks in the room. That guy who acts tough doesn't. He starts to either try to over embellish and then get exposed, or just backs down because a real alpha walked in the room. It's very noticeable, and so that's a different thing. Real alpha is different, and so that guy doesn't represent alphas. He's just a loud guy or insecure guy because there's no need to do that, and so insecure guy isn't solid alpha. And so in which case, they're going to find out that is you better be bringing a certain level of competency and strength if you're going to come in here with bravado. And that overcompensation of bravado with a frail setup is not safe.
Competency.
Yeah, because you can't actually back up the bravado you're walking in the room with. And that does get attention. Because if I walk in like I'm Conor McGregor, and I walk in like I'm the baddest dude in the world, and you start going, I'm going to test that shit.
Someone's going to check you.
I want to see if you are. Are you really that tough? And they're going to test competency. Exactly. And this happens in every category. This is, in fact, and just so I can just sidebar this a little bit, even when people come into my group, I run a large group, and those guys who have to go, I've gone through therapy, I've gone into counseling, I've been to couples counseling, I've gone to shit, and you guys are a bunch of fucking idiots. I'm like, well, then you better ask me competency questions to see if I'm one of those. Challenge me directly right away. If I am not competent and you do not see my skill level is at the level that you would require, like, hey, I can learn from this one, don't work with me. If you think you're better than me, this won't work. So you have to challenge competency. If you can't bang with me, and you're like, damn, that guy kicked my fucking ass. I'm like, okay, I can learn from that guy. But if you come in and you house me and I'm fumbling and I'm kind of foolish and I have answers that don't really make sense and I'm backing down from you, you're going to be like, I can't learn from this guy. And so we have to. That's the energy of the male world, is you have to be competent. And so if you come in without credential or without actual competency, if you come in like I'm Conor McGregor because I'm a dude, and you go like, mimicking. Well, yeah, can you actually do it? And you're like, because anyone can mimic. I didn't think I'd have to actually do it. And you're like, if you do it, I'm gonna have to toss your ass. Don't do that. You're not the boss here because you have an attitude.
I want to pick up on something you said, but you moved past it too quickly.
Okay,
you said competencies in multiple domains. Okay, that is a very, very, very important point. That young men, are you listening? And dads, go and play this clip to your sons. You can develop competency in thousands of arenas of categories. I think you said categories earlier. So what I did, so you guys are meeting me now. I'm 51 years old. I've had my own business. I've got a pilot's license. I did these paintings behind me, if you can see them. I'm a pretty successful counselor, coach / consultant. Okay, you know what it's like. It gets complicated. I've immigrated. I'm married to a smoking hot, very successful woman. Okay, right? Okay, give me what's due, right? So what I've done is I've found ways of getting good at different things. Okay, young men need to understand you don't need to be good at everything, boys. You get good at one thing. Find something that gives you a little bit of vibe. Focus on it for a while. Get good at it. When you learn that you can get good at something, you can apply that to anything, almost anything. Okay. I was thrown out of school. I don't have a high school diploma. Okay. Long story. I was actually a very intelligent kid at school, but circumstances, I was left alone when I was just about to turn 16. I was left alone. So I couldn't sustain it. They threw me out of school. Years later, I ended up getting a pilot's license, which doesn't require a high school diploma. Okay. But I could do it because I have my own business and I could take the time and I had the money. And how did I get into study psychology at the age of 46? Not because I had a high school diploma, because I didn't, because I had a pilot's license. Okay. So you get multiple competencies that align, that compound. You used the word earlier. I'm so glad you said that word. You have to understand the compounding effect of life, of better decisions, small decisions that you make each day. That, by the way, I'm just going to throw this in there just to cause some trouble. If you're smoking bags of weed, it'll not happen. It will not happen. Okay. I'm not saying if you're smoking a joint or two now and then, but a lot of people, I deal with a lot of people, it's partly because I deal with South Africans, but weed is sold on every street corner in South Africa. And men in South Africa are super struggling in major ways because people don't know me. My year of practicum in South Africa was in the suicide crisis call center of South Africa. Okay. And I was partly responsible for the first male psychology conference in South Africa. So I'm very knowledgeable about the conditions for men in South Africa. And one of the biggest problems is they're abusing weed. And now we've got the compounding effect of weed and porn. So if you want to completely null your brain and null your emotions, you do weed and you watch porn. And the next day they do the same thing. People need to understand that young boys especially need to understand that you will have opportunities to get good at something. And it's really important that you exercise that you experience that. So I think what happens a lot is these boys get given this idea that you need to get good at everything. There's the evolutionary psychology stuff that's been pumped out by people like Andrew Tate that say you've got to be this alpha male. Okay, you've got to dominate. Okay, that's rubbish. All right, like we were just saying earlier. If you're planning to dominate, you're gonna get more than you bargained for, because inevitably someone's gonna check you. But what I would say, especially for the young men, and this is kind of the thing that I started talking about earlier a little bit, was the incel culture, the involuntary celibate culture, which some people have adopted, but some people they don't even realize they have adopted, of opting out of adult expectations, of manhood expectations. Okay. One of the ways to remedy that, and this goes for the fathers of boys as well, they need to understand that one of the ways of remedying that is understanding that you need to go with what the young man is already interested in. Okay. But you need to expand it into, so in other words, you might get a young man that is obsessed with playing online gaming. All right. But now look at what he's playing. If he's playing something like a warfighter game, okay, some kind of first-person shooter thing, then maybe take him to the firing range, get him out into the real world, get him handling things, get him touching things, talking to people. I mean, I'm just using that as an example. If there's some kind of adventure thing that he's doing, then take him to a real-life adventure course, take him out into the wilderness during the holidays, go do a hike with him, activate these things in the real world. The point being, though, you've got to pay attention to what he's interested in, encouraging him that in that arena so that he feels what it's like to get better at something. So the important part, and this comes from research psychology, hey, this isn't just my little pop pet theory, when they feel that they can get competencies, like you were saying earlier, then they get motivated. So you want to unlock motivation. It's the most common complaint these days. These young men say, I don't have any motivation. Well, what have you done that has given you some sense that you can achieve something, that you can get better at something? So it's the specific feeling of getting better at something. What it is exactly is not important. And I don't know if your recording caught it, but just as an example, it happens to be in the background of my video. These two paintings behind me are mine. And these are things that I started doing when I was very young, that I suddenly realized, wow, I'm actually really good at this. Okay, but look at what's actually going on there. That's not just painting. Okay, there's conceptualization, there's understanding spatial understandings. Okay, what we were talking about earlier that men tend to have. Understanding depth, understanding shading, understanding emotions. Okay, there's emotion in these paintings. You know, when I realized I could do that, I went and applied myself to all sorts of other things. So I went on to do a pilot's license. I went on to run my own business for 21 years. And then in midlife, I finally did a psychology degree, and that's where we are now. Okay, but the initial thing was, okay, I can get better at something. That's the important part. But you got to work with some kind of intrinsic motivation, intrinsic passion that pre-exists. You cannot instill this in them.
Well, you can in a different way. And this is where there's elements of you are not incorrect. So you are correct. That is a need. And also removing perfectionism is also a requirement too, because if they think I have to be perfect and that's how I win. I actually threw an aphorism that I wrote into a group, and I would encourage anybody who's made it this far in, write this down and then break this down, because this is actually 3 parts that are very complex that seem so simple you may miss it. The aphorism I wrote is, do your best to be your best, and better is best. That's 3 different parts there. It sounds so stupid. It sounds dumb. If you break that down, it gets into the doing element, the being element, and the removing of perfectionism. And
Excellent.
if you look at the balance of life and the yin and the yang of the do and the be, plus how do I achieve it without having to feel shame or guilt or blame or judgment, because better is best. You start praising effort instead of perfection. This is what makes somebody feel very, very good. Now, this is where we go back to the judgment element of community. And this is something that was very surprising, because I have built a very large community. It's growing exponentially right now. And awesome. I'm understanding when it comes to defeating this depressions or limiting belief systems or anxiety or shame or doubt or, anything that would corrupt your identity in this way. I'm realizing that being around people who have belief systems that can support this has changed everything. And I'll give you an example of something I do with guys. I'll be like, one of my mottos for myself and for my community is, I believe in you. You should join me in that. I believe in you.
Love that.
You should join me in doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is one of those things, like, sell to me why you don't believe in yourself. Like, maybe you're onto something. Maybe I should be using the don't believe in me system. Sell it to me, because somebody sold it to you and you bought it. Why is that better than believing in yourself? Because I believe in you. Why don't you do it too? And this is getting into the thing of like, well, if I believe in you, now all of a sudden I watch guys who were so beat the fuck down that they couldn't even jump off the cliff. They were just rolling and crawling toward it. And you have those same guys who are ready to eat a bullet, who are now inspiring guys and helping guys and pulling guys out of hell, because somebody had the courage to say, or even the vulnerability to say, yeah, hey, what are you doing, man? I completely believe in you. And they're like, no one's ever said that to me before. And I'm like, how could you not see it? You're fucking awesome, man. Why aren't you practicing that? You know how that practice makes better, right? You just keep practicing, raise your competency, your confidence goes up because you get good. Why aren't you practicing getting good? I believe you can do it. Why don't you? And they're like, yeah, you're right, man. Yeah. You're right. And if you're around a bunch of guys who are actually doing their own competency, men you respect, men who are also doing it, and they go, dude, you're badass. You didn't know? And they're like, no, I didn't know. They're like, yeah, dude, come hang out with us. We're going to go fly like eagles later. Quit hanging out with the chickens.
Exactly.
And they go, I can fly. I'm like, do you not know your wingspan is twice as big as everybody else? What the fuck? Yeah, of course you can fly, you doofus. Let's go hang out. Come on. They're like, okay, let's do it. And then we go hang and we're flying and we're doing cool shit. They're like, I didn't know I could dream. I didn't know I was allowed to believe in myself. I didn't know. And we're like, fun as fuck, right? Do you notice how nobody's up here competing for this air? Everyone's down in the pecking order trying to fuck around being alphas with the chickens when we could just fly, and it's amazing.
100%. 100% agree with you. Can I throw something in there?
Sure.
The tragedy that I find is that a lot of fathers lost that somewhere along the line. Okay. And look, guys, men, our dads were messed up. Okay. Our dads were children of men who fought wars. Okay. They had an excuse. You don't have that excuse anymore. You know, and I don't want to victim blame. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not a victim shamer. Okay. What it's more about is about making a better decision today to say, what are you reflecting on your children, whether they're female or male, doesn't matter. Are you reflecting on them that you can actually be, you can grow, that you can be passionate about stuff? Because what a lot of men have done is they've taken this whole provide and protect role far too seriously, and they've submitted. This was the word I used earlier about submission that seems to be so prevalent in our culture, submitting to this paradigm of just providing and protecting as if that itself brings salvation. No, it doesn't. You've got to live life. I interrupted you. Carry on.
No,
you're good. You wanted to say something.
Well, we both go on rants, and so it's good. And so it's good. But you're not wrong. And this is something that's important. And I had to do this with my parents too. There are generational curses that are passed forward. And I don't believe that any of our parents are trying to fuck their kids up. I don't think that's like, they're not waking up going, I'm going to fuck this kid up today. Like everyone's doing the best that they know. And you're seeing a lot of times, like this may even be too, and this is something like, you know, I even attribute to my dad, is he probably really did do a better job with me than what he was given, even if it was very rough. And I have to go, like, I gotta attribute, like there are things that my grandparents did that he's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not passing that forward. That was too far. So I got what I believe would be a better version than what my dad had. It doesn't mean it was a great job. We were all fucked up, and my dad talked about it. And I love my dad now, and we're good. And I respect and honor my dad now, but we had to go through some shit. But I understand now, because I've helped my dad work through stuff that like his parents put him through. And I'm like, damn, like that's really brutal. And these generational curses were passed on even before them. And this is where it comes down to the dads, where I don't think people are trying to do bad. Everyone's doing the best they know, but who trained them? And people who don't know trained them. And so everyone's doing their best. Yeah. Everyone's doing their best. And so to go, break the curse, you're like, I don't know how to do that. I would do that. I don't know how to do that. And that's why people like us are necessary, is to go like, there are steps that you can do to break this curse. And each curse has a thing you have to know how to break that curse. It's not one thing breaks all curses. Each one has their own code. Each one has their own trick. And whether it's fear, or whether it's doubt, or whether it's distractions, or it's addiction, or it's anger, or each one has a different code you have to do. And if you don't understand how to break those curses, then they're going to become identities that go forward into your next generation, and you pass it to your children, Exactly. When I meet my men, I go, there's a generational curse there, and it's not your parents' fault. They didn't know how to break it, but you're putting that onto your kids. The reality is somebody has to break this thing. Is it going to be you, or are you going to have your kids be responsible for it? Who's doing it? And as a man right there, you already feel like, oh, it's going to be me. I'm breaking this fucking thing. I'm like, I'll show you how to break it. So that way, when your kid has to fight it, which they will, you can teach them how to defeat it, instead of that becomes their identity and they give it to their kids. And this is where we got to give our parents a little bit of break here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They're like, they're just, that's the best I know. And if I knew better, I would do that. Like,
they would have. Yeah. I must tell you, I used, can I assume most of your followers are Christians?
Not all, no, I'm not. I'm Christian, but it's not religion based. And so I have a lot of guys in my group because we teach that God is relationship, not religion.
Like
and
that.
so,
Well, I'm only
so,
asking because I'm gonna make a reference to the symbolism of Jesus on the cross. Okay.
Sure.
And I did this. I'm telling you this because I did this with a young man the other day who is currently being completely abused by his partner, the mother of his child, but they're not married. Okay, she's walking all over him. It's a disgrace what she's doing to this very noble kid. Okay, and they have a boy. All right. So now, for me, it's a double whammy. Okay. Now we've got the man and another boy involved. So unfortunately for her, I'm completely on his side. I'm not interested in keeping it together because she's abusing him. All right. So there was something I could see he was. So he's religious. So the reason I asked is because I just want to make sure that I'm not wasting the concept on a naive. But I suppose we're all cultural Christians.
I would be Christ follower. I don't always agree with the term Christian because there's a lot of versions I don't agree with.
I like that as well.
But I do follow Christ. I'll read Big Guns himself and go like, well, Jesus said, or Yeshua, whichever version you go. I'm like, well, he said.
Yeah. I really enjoy this idea that's come out lately of the cultural Christian. I think that's accurate and we should embrace that. Okay. But the symbolism, if you look at what happened with Jesus on the cross, okay, then the symbol is permeates Western culture. Okay. So what I did in the session is I could see he was struggling to. It was like I need you to cross this bridge, and I'm holding your hand, but you won't cross, you know. So I said, okay, hold on. I pulled up a picture of Jesus on the cross, one of the good ones where it's like quite realistic. And I said, look at this picture. What do you see? And he said, well, I see Jesus on the cross. I said, no. What do you see? A man being crucified. Okay. Now, the reason why the symbolism became, in my opinion, why this became so popular and so well entrenched, okay, when something works with the psyche of man, with the psyche of humanity, it works. It gets accepted. Okay, the things that don't work with us, with our natural order of things, with our natural instincts, they don't get accepted ultimately. Okay, the reason this has got so well accepted is because if you look at the scenario of Jesus, the man, gets put on the cross, he sacrifices for the good of everyone. How many men are sacrificing for the good of everyone? Maybe not everyone. Like obviously, religion is being dramatic. It's saying he sacrificed, he forgave all our sins. Okay, but the symbolism of a man sacrificing himself for the others. Okay, that is what men do. Okay, we talk about male disposability. Well, that's true, but we need to work with that, guys. You can't just sit there and go, oh well, men are disposable. Okay, no. Yes, men are disposable. So you need to make yourself indisposable. That's the mission. Okay. So what Jesus did symbolically is he made himself indisposable. Okay. He inevitably got cornered by his enemies. He got crucified. So he gets punished. That's a very important point. He gets punished for doing good deeds. All right. Because as they say, no good deed goes unpunished. That, by the way, ties to the gamma bias that I was talking about earlier. That when men do good deeds, it gets ignored. Okay, broadly speaking, the culture, men doing good deeds gets ignored. When a woman does a good deed, she's hailed for months. She gets announced as Woman of the Year and all sorts of things. Okay, although nowadays Woman of the Year is actually a man. But anyway, so the powerful
twice part, now, by the way, twice there's been a woman. Woman of the Year has been a man.
I didn't know that. Yeah. So the important part about what I'm saying is. So the man accepts that he's sacrificed. He accepts the punishment. Okay. He didn't fight on the cross. He got on the cross. He got crucified. He got stabbed by one of the guards. Okay. So he gets stabbed by another man. Okay. Then he gets taken. Now this is the important part. Then he gets taken down. He's not dead. He gets okay. Technically in the Bible he dies. Okay. But we know he's not dead. Right. But wait. He gets taken down. He gets taken to the cave. He gets put in. I would use the modern sort of understanding that he goes into hibernation. Okay. He does a kind of self-isolation or what's the other term that we use? when you go off to study and to learn, and then you come back. What's that term?
I don't know, pilgrimage. I don't know what you're talking about. Like
something
as far
like
as
that. Yeah. So
something
anyway, men sometimes need to go away. Okay, we go to the wilderness, we go hiking, we whatever, and we come back better. We come back stronger. So it's very symbolic. He goes into the cave for 3 days. He then gets cared for and nurtured by the mother. Okay, by the feminine maternal power, the power of femininity. He gets restored, and what does he do? He ascends to the Father. He becomes the Father. All right. So when men understand that it's through self-sacrifice that you receive nurturing, and then your role is to become the father. Whether you're an actual biological father or not is not the point. It's not important. So there's too much fixation these days on, a lot of men will say, well, I'll probably never become a father, so I'm just going to opt out. Okay, that's absurd, because you can still follow the path of understanding that there's reward in some kind of sacrifice. Okay, but knowing that that's leading to nurturing and caring and whatever that will come from, like, naturally in the system. So when I explained it to this guy, he understood that his journey is to look after his son, and that to complete the cycle properly, he needs a woman that can provide the nurturing, and the woman that he's with cannot do that. Okay, there's a lot of reasons why she can't do that, but the woman that he's with cannot do that. But if he finds a woman that can do that, he will be fulfilled, and so will his son. So it's not so much about religion. It's just about the symbolism and why it's so powerful and so effective.
It's clever to try to put that together that way. And the concept of, like, I have an entire list of guys go like, what do we do? And almost everything on the list is to serve others. And so you're not wrong with the service element. And even the concept of the way that God works is to say, I will sacrifice that which is most dear to me for you. This is the God that gives, instead of a God like in mythologies like, Norse or Greek, which is give me, take, or punish and destroy. And so I see where you're going with this, and the men ignored, women praised, the accepting of punishment. I think there's a simple way to do this. And I've been teaching guys this for a while now, and it's something where you got to remember, this woman's power only comes from what is given to her. And I'm saying this strategically and literally. A woman can't take power from a man. And I'll challenge any of you. I'm stronger than every woman listening to this. And I'm not being a dick. Every woman listening to this, if I were to transition today, I'd be in the top 0.05% of women on earth. And I don't even fucking compete for that. But I'm strong. I can bench over 300. I'm fucking strong. I'm a strong dude. And so like I'm not a weak guy. And so that would make me an elite woman. That's not me being shitty. That just is. And so with this kind of stuff that we're looking at, women can't take power from me. I have 5 girls in my house. I'm a girl dad. I got 5 girls. None of them can take power from me. I have to give. And I do give because I can. I have it to give. But even when, our girls were training with me, I trained martial arts for years. I've trained with very, very dangerous people. I'm a dangerous person. As soon as our middle daughter was getting, like, some girl was messing with her, I'm like, let me show you a couple of things. And she realized, if these mitts get you, it's terrifying. She didn't understand the capability of this. The reason I bring this up is because this guy, the only reason he's able to be abused is because he chooses to be. And I'm saying this literally for you men. It's because you are choosing to please the matriarch and give power based on judgment and punishment that can only be done if you accept it. There's something about teaching a man to hold the line. Is you watch women try and tell men how to be as though they understand. And if you give a woman, or if you give a weak man, I'll say I'm both, if you give somebody power, they will show you who they are. And if this woman is in an authority position in this dynamic, that's who she is. She's abusive, she's mean, she's unempathetic, unnurturing, unkind, and she's a taker. And you're like, that's what you do with power. Remember, the circumstances don't define you. They reveal you to yourself. That shows you. This is not a leader. She should never have power. This is not the person who should be in charge. And so when you see radical energy going, well, this is how it's going to be, and I need to control you, and I need to be this way, that's a dictatorship. This is where men have to learn how to be compassionately, empathetically disagreeable. I hear you. I understand you. And I can feel you. But there ain't no way in hell I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Hell no. Hell no, I'm not doing that. I understand where you're coming from, and I got you. Yeah. But no, I'm not doing that shit.
But no.
She's like, well, you're a jerk then. I'm like, call me whatever judgment you want. You can remember, and this is something to understand too. People who want to start and try to judge, Carl Jung said, thinking is difficult. That's why people judge.
Yeah.
I would make it stronger and say thinking and empathy are difficult. That's why people judge instead.
Yeah.
They can't do this.
Agree.
They can't do this. And it's not, they can't. It's not won't. Can't. You're not even trying to think, and you can't empathize because most of these people are living in pure denial of truth anyways. So they can't be compassionate to themselves, let alone to another person. And so they're missing key elements of leadership in order to be the one who should be in charge, in which case, this is why guys are to be leaders, is because I can be stoic and cool, but I can be compassionate and empathetic and understanding to you and still disagree wholeheartly. This makes him so he can hold the line, and she can be as mean as she wants, but you can't do anything. So no.
I'm loving, you've brought up the word leadership a couple of times, and I'm just loving it because the one of the things I learned running my own business, and I must say, I learned. So you don't suddenly become a business owner and have all the entrepreneurial skills. Okay.
Correct.
I would say it takes about 7 years to get that right. Okay. So anyone who's thinking of starting their own business, you're in for a hell of a ride. Okay.
You'll fail forward for sure.
Exactly. But real leadership is etched in stone. Okay. Well, maybe I should say etched in wood because we used the stone analogy earlier in a negative way. It's etched out of you, and it becomes like, for me, I'm absolutely a leader in my home. Absolutely. Okay. And when I'm with my friends, I will give them space. I like what you said earlier about women having space as well, and the men providing that space. I like that as well. I'll let my friends have their space, but if leadership is required, I'll step in and I'll say, okay, well, this and this, whatever that leadership looks like, But the thing is, because I'm not intimidated by other people's posturing, okay, I don't have a need to dominate. Okay, so all this stuff starts coming back on itself. That I think when we go back to what we were saying about young men finding something that they're good at. Okay, when you get better and better at something, leadership comes to you. Okay, then it brings the challenge. Are you ready? So someone will say, I actually wrote an article about this. It was more referring to the effect of IQ. But it applies to leadership skills as well. Okay, but unfortunately, if we're going to be technical about it, it's very difficult to have low IQ and have high leadership. Okay, it's quite difficult. So my article was about understanding the struggles of people that have higher IQ than the people around them. Okay, wherever they are in the world, wherever circumstance they are. The point being that as you develop in whatever arena you're in, you're going to get recognized. Your head's going to pop up above the parapets, and someone's going to say, you're the next corporal or the next lieutenant or whatever it is, and you're like, oh, I didn't want that. I didn't want that role. Okay. So you get tested. Now you have to achieve a standard. The standard has been moved. Okay. But I want men to understand that this isn't something to be scared of, because the chances are it's going to be within the realm of your competencies. Well, it should be if you tailor it well in the beginning. So what happened with me, for example, is someone offered me the financing to buy my own business because I didn't have money. I mean, I grew up very poor. So the opportunity was, that's leadership. You become the owner of this business overnight. Okay. And I found that I could not say no. And I analyzed it, and I was like, if I said no, I don't think I'd be able to live with myself. So it was an opportunity at leadership, but the actual leadership skills developed over the next 3 to 7 years. Okay. To the point that now I can apply all those skills with my clients. Okay. acting in leadership, I can talk to you in a way which is, I know the way, listen to me, or at least, I like what you said earlier, I know a better way. Okay. I don't know the perfect way for you, but I do know a better way,
I think it's good in the breakdown, like to become a leader, like it is fail forward. This is why it's the perfectionism has to go. It's measure, absolutely. And this is for all parents and all people. When you reward effort, then like, here's an example, like for what you're talking about, the leadership and the failing concept. Here, look, let's say the middle of this thing right here, this little dot, that's our target. We got to hit this little tiny dot, and we're going to shoot at it, okay? So this little tiny dot here, that's what you want to shoot at. And you and I were shooting together. Now I'm going to show you what reward effort looks like. You ready? You shoot your first shot, and it hits like way up here, like not even close, right? I'm like, okay, cool. First shot, we see where we're at. Let's try to adjust it a little bit. You're like, all right, cool. I'm going to adjust it. And then you shoot, and you hit here. And I'm like, bro, you got closer, man. Fuck yeah, high five, dude. You got closer. Let's try it again. And you go,
motivated.
Bam, and then you hit here. And I'm like, dude, you're even closer than you were before, man. Keep going. You're doing great, man. Let's keep getting closer. It's like, yeah, I'm getting closer. And then you shoot here. It's like, dude, look how much distance like we've crossed already to get there. Like you're going this far. That's awesome.
Exactly.
Look how dude, you're doing huge distance, huge growth. He's like, yeah, I feel good. I'm getting closer. And then you're hitting here. And you're like, oh, it's getting close, man. And then you hit the edge. You're right at the edge. You hit the right at the end. And we're like, we hit the target. Yeah. Like, did you hit the bullseye? No, but we're hitting, at least we're making noise when I shoot now. That's exciting, man. Like, bump my fist, man. Yeah. That's awesome. You're like, yes, dude, I got this. You're like, yeah, we got this. And then we're going to go shoot, and we miss it that time. Like, oh, dude, it's cool. You already know you can hit it. Let's hit it. Like, okay, I got it. And then it goes bink, and you hit it right next to, like, right in the center. You're like, bro, yes. We're like pumped now. We're jazzed out of our mind. We're like, dude, we're getting it. And we'll shoot and be hitting all around this thing, and it's still exciting and fun, and we're getting better. And then you just hit right at the very edge of it, right? Just graze the edge of that bullseye, and we're losing our mind. It's so awesome. Like, we are so jazzed. It's incredible. We're it's pizza fucking night. Like, we're rocking tonight. It was awesome, dude. And we're all proud of our dude for getting so close, man. You were right at the bullseye. And like, we get excited. And that's what reward effort looks like, because missing didn't make you feel bad. Missing was just, hey, how do I adjust to get better? And that's what it looks like with our children. That's what it looks like with our spouses. That's what it looks like with our friends. That's what it looks like with our community. And when you're a leader, you get pumped about effort, not about perfection. Here's why the perfection doesn't work. If you shot here, you fucking missed. And if you you touched the edge of this, missed.
You missed by miles.
Well, it doesn't matter.
Close.
Missing is missing. You suck either way. If you if you hit the dot and just barely don't get the middle of it, still failed. If you hit here or if you hit just the very edge, failed.
It's black, white.
You suck. You're not good enough. You failed again. Another failed. Not good. Not perfect. You failed. Do you see the different energy? It doesn't matter what your progression is. Failed. And
they've given up by then.
Yeah. And by this point, it's like, well, then they'll do a doubt, dressed up as a rhetorical, which is like, well, what's the fucking point? What's the fucking point in trying? But if you actually use, I'm going to show you a really cool trick with doubt. If you leave the cadence there and say, what's the point? And then leave it with that like, feeling, you don't answer the question and it feels like it's answered. That's why it's rhetorical. What's the fucking point in even trying then? And then they just go like, leave it as though not answering it means the point is no answer. There's no point. But if you change the cadence and go, well, that's a good question. What is the point? Why were you trying to hit that target? Yes. What were you trying to get? What's the point? What were you doing? Well, if I were to do that, then I could have this, I could have that, and this would make me feel like this, and then I would be better, and I would feel good about this. And I'm like, that's a very good reason to do it. Let's keep trying. If you leave the doubt rhetorical question unanswered, like what's the fucking point? It gives you nothing. But if you answer the question, it brings back inspiration. Just a trick for you guys. If you ever catch one of those, like, does anybody even give a fuck? I'm like, that's a good question. Does anybody care? Who cares? I care. Yeah. I believe in you. Like, if you answer the question, it becomes inspiring. So anyways, when people start going for this target, When people start going for this target, if you base it on effort, it makes you excited even when you miss. It's still just fun because growth is the thing. This is for your leaders to understand. If you're praising effort and not perfection, everyone just keeps getting better. Remember, if you aim to do better, then like better is best. Perfection that's exactly what is a problem.
Yeah. So
now,
that's why I said earlier.
Remember earlier the same thing? What if I'm like, hey, Angelo, I've been practicing this for 30 years. Do you see the little dot? Check this out. Boom, bullseye. You're like, whoa, fuck, dude, that's amazing. You're like, watch this. Bullseye. You're like, that dude, 2 in a row? Watch this.
Is that bragging? No.
Bullseye. No, just watch. Just watch. Check this out, Angelo. Get excited for me. You ready? Bullseye. Pretty good, right? No, watch. Bullseye. Watch this now. Watch this. Bullseye. Pretty exciting, right? Bullseye. Yeah. It starts getting like, let me guess. Bullseye? Yeah. Okay. Bullseye. I get it. You got a bullseye.
Yeah. Bullseye. What else can you do?
Yeah, no. I've been studying this for 30 years. I can do this though. Check it out. Bullseye. You're like, dude, I get the bullseye. Can we do something else?
But if you apply that skill to something else,
right,
it changes. The novelty remains.
What I'm showing is if you aim for perfection, even if I hit it every time, did you see how, like we talked about that earlier in relationships and you're doing everything right. This is why the leader needs to reward effort, not results. When I go off of results, either I get it just right or I failed completely. There's no real win. And then if I win too many times, it's also not special too. Do you see that that's a failed 100%. Leader? It's a failed system. If I only go off of numbers, we forget that money, numbers, even relationships follow good behavior. They don't lead.
So I'll give you an example. Okay. In my sessions, I'll sometimes deal with people that are severely depressed, obviously. And it's a funny moment because I engage with them knowing that there's a hungry mind in there somewhere. Okay.
Yes.
So I engage. Okay. And with some of them, it can be exhausting because you've got to speak for 90% of the first hours that you spend with them. You spend 3, 4, 5 weeks with them where you do most of the talking. Okay. But there'll come a moment where I'll look at them, I'll look at their eyes, and I'll look at a moment and I'll say, I can see you're doubting what's happening here. But what you don't see is what I see, which is the progress, okay? Like you were showing on the screen there, the progress, all right? And this is where I really catch them. I say, do you realize you're always on time and you come to every session every week, okay? You're hitting the target, right? It's not to go back to your analogy, it's not bullseye. You're not thriving suddenly, okay? But that's not the point. You're getting closer and closer and closer. You're starting to engage with me. One of the most amazing things, and I'm sure you've had this feeling, the most amazing things is when you spend weeks with someone and then they themselves have an insight. And you're like, yes, now they see. And once it starts, it's almost like the engine switches on.
Yes.
They come back the next week with another one and the next, and then the complaints, we call them complaints that they bring to the session, get much deeper. They get more philosophical and more interesting and more meaningful even.
Which gives you the opportunity to do more powerful reforming. Yes. It's a lot of fun to do it. And like, it's masterful. That's why I tell you, like, give me anything. Mike, we do, I have a group call in 30 minutes. You can even listen in if you want, but all the guys come in and it's called a phalanx. You know, so if you ever seen the movie 300, it's all the shields locked together, protecting each other as a shield wall.
Yeah.
You know, that's a phalanx formation. And so we create a phalanx formation and go, what are you guys fighting so we can fight it together? It's a lot tougher to fight the shield wall than just one warrior. You know, and so I go, what are you battling today? And if it's depression, for example, you'd be like, man, I'm really down on myself. I'm like, you're down on yourself. I'm like, what's the I am statement that you keep cycling? He's like, I am not good enough. I am a piece of shit. I'm like, okay, I see that shame system we talked about. Oh, somebody put some shame in here. I'm like, let's go ahead and fight that together. Let's go ahead and let's challenge it. Because rule number 7 in the Warrior's Creed is we challenge everything, even me. You challenge everything. Good. And I'm like, Well, let's challenge that. Let's see what that is. I am. Well, that was put in there by somebody, which means it's actually not yours. We can agree to that because little kids aren't born with that. So that had to get put in there.
Yeah.
You know, you don't see like a 3-year-old go, I'm a piece of shit. Like that has to be taught. You know, that has to be taught. Somebody put a belief system in there to make you feel you're not good enough because.
Exactly.
Where did this come from? And let's see if it's true. Let's go ahead and challenge this. And so we'll go through and found like, you know, oh, it's my mom who said that, or my dad, or my best friend, or my ex-girlfriend, or my ex-wife, or my teacher. Like somebody added that. Somebody put that in there. You're a piece of shit, or you're worthless. You're not good enough. And then I go, okay, let's challenge this a little bit. Does that seem true or not true that you were just born a piece of shit? And they're like, it doesn't seem true. I'm like, it doesn't. It doesn't really seem likely. It seems like somebody added a judgment to you.
Let's think about that.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Do you see it? Do you see where that is? They're like, yeah, somebody did add that in there, didn't they? That's fucked up. I'm like, it is a little fucked up. The reason that we do this awareness is because it's not about win, lose, good, bad. It's about you're leveling up. Did you know that you're able to catch these? Did you know that you're catching belief systems now? Did you know we're challenging belief systems? Did you know you're doing this? And I'm teaching you how to fish because there's probably like 50 of these I am statements that need to be removed. But if you learn how to do the system, well, now it just becomes systematic. You're like, hey, I found one in here that says I'm not good enough. I'm like, cool. Compared to who? They're like, no. I'm like, well, that's weird. How can you be not good enough compared to nothing? Seems like you're the fucking best then if we do it by that standard. They're like, I guess. Yeah, there's... Not good enough to what? Yeah, you're right. I'm like, I don't think that's yours, dude. If you don't even know what you're talking about, how can it be authentic?
Exactly.
Yeah, that doesn't seem right.
You can't explain it.
And that quickly, just reframing, like, let's look at that differently. It makes us, congrats, dude. You just leveled up today. You found something and you're challenging it. You're like, I'm gonna write that out because that doesn't seem right. I'm like, it looks like you're onto something. It looks like you just got stronger, man. You just got closer to the target.
There's something I've used a couple of times with people that are suicidal. Sometimes you've got to be a bit creative.
Yes.
But what I'll say to them sometimes is, you know, if you understand how vulnerable you were for the first, 16 to 18 years of your life, the first 16, 18 years of your life. Mm-hmm. I mean, the first 12 years of your life, you're an amoeba, okay? You're dependent on adults. Yeah. If an adult has a bad day, you're in deep trouble, okay? And a lot of adults, by the way, it works in reverse as well. A lot of adults have forgotten what their children feel like when they start being unstable and unpredictable, okay? It's terrifying, guys, for your children. So snap out of it. But anyway, that's a different issue. But when you go back and you think, you were this thing, okay? You came out and you dependent on everybody. Someone fed you every couple of hours, okay? Somebody kept you clean every couple of hours for years, okay? Then they educated you. They kept you warm and safe for years, okay? You survived childhood. Can we just take a moment, okay? You are, by definition, in the history of living creatures, a winner, okay? You're alive, okay? And by the way, whatever age they are, I said to them, how old are you? Well, I'm 54. You survived another 40 whatever years, you know? You're a winner. So yes, you're having a bad moment. You've got some maladaptations. You've got bad habits. You've got things that didn't turn out well. But let's just be focused on there is life and then there's no life, okay? And you've survived childhood. I mean, it always brings a bit of it like what you're doing right now. You're smiling. We all know that surviving childhood was actually hard, okay? I've joked sometimes if they're amenable to it, I'll say to them, we survived puberty because puberty was terrifying for many of us, you know? But, you know, I wanted to say that thing about why some men, some of the males that I deal with want to transition is exactly because of what you said. It's this escapism where people will stop asking them performance-based questions. They'll stop challenging them. So the men who want to transition, what they're doing is they're doing this binary black-white thing, like you were saying earlier about missing the target. Oh, you're a failure. Well, now all of a sudden, if you can't be a man, capital M-A-N, then failure. Okay, so somewhere along the line, they were told you either pass or fail. Mm-hmm. So if they're failing at being a man, it must mean that they're a woman.
Interesting.
Okay, as insane as that sounds.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. That's interesting.
But that's what they say. I'm telling you, that's exactly what they say. So the detransitioners have insights because they've come out of it, and they'll say, well, I felt like I wouldn't be a good man, so I thought I'd be better off mimicking being a woman.
Interesting.
And then another point I want to throw in there, I just love what you were saying about how you change the tone of the statement.
Answering
so
the
I'll tell you the
rhetorical
one
questions.
I do. This is so funny that we both do similar things.
It's because they work. It's principles.
They work. They're principles. Yeah. In suicide counseling, and every now and then with my current clients, they'll say something, and I'll say, "Okay, do you ever like question what the purpose of your life is? Do you ever like wonder like why am I here and why am I bothering? Not necessarily that you're suicidal, but maybe you're just questioning why am I married? Why am I whatever? But I say to them, do you realize that this is the nice thing about being an existentialist, because it's part of my philosophy. It's literally in the textbooks, okay, or in the philosophy books probably. The question, why am I alive? What's the purpose of my life? Those are actually very good questions.
It is a good question.
So like you said, you change the cadence. Instead of waking up and going, oh, why am I alive? You wake up and you go, why am I alive? I'm going to go and find out. I'm going to get up and I'm going to go and find out.
Yeah.
That's the mission. I keep using the word mission.
No, it's correct. I put people on mission every day. I like there's three pieces here that you're doing that I also do. And I love that we keep catching, like, I just say it different. And I think that's important to understand that there's so much opportunity to do the same principle with your fighting style. And so we do the same principle. We just do it in a different way, which is why it works, because you gave reassurance and understanding, purpose. And then the other piece that whenever I have suicide calls is belonging. They don't belong anywhere. And so when you're isolated with no contribution, they're not doing assessment of the survival rates. They're not doing it. Also, the survival rate thing helps beat anxiety, which I can show too. But you're not wrong with going like, do you know what your survival percentage is? Like, it's 100%. I'm not dead. You're exactly. Like, you have a perfect score, man. That's fucking incredible. And
what about your ancestors?
And do you have more resources now to handle things than when you were a little kid? They're like, yeah, and you survived that shit. So what are we worried about? Like, you got this, dude. And then, it's purpose and belonging is whenever I have a suicide call. And I go like, dude, you should hang out with us, man. We want you around. And like, I got something for you to do when you're hanging with the boys. You're going to love it, man. It's a lot of fun. Like, really? I'm like, yeah, dude, come and hang with the guys. And then when they get welcomed in, like at first they're like, I'm going to kick my own ass. But when you're with a bunch of competent, badass dudes who are like, dude, you're fucking awesome. Quit doing that. And like, I am? They're like, yeah, dude, quit making it. You're making it weird. Quit doing that. And like you said, we're going to kind of do this like shame thing. Like, shaming you is shameful. Let's build you up. It's way better. And like, that's what's funny is like, we make it weird to kick your ass because we got too many other things to kick ass on. So come join us with kicking ass because we believe in you. You should join us with that.
Yeah.
And there's something to that. So I can take a guy who's like, I'm ready to end it. And within 20 minutes, we're laughing and we got cool stuff to do. And it's because I understand its purpose and belonging. And if you can go like, dude, you're just not hanging with the boys. You're one of us. Come hang out. And like, really? I'm like, yeah. That's why I told you community is really changed the game for the way we do this. Because like having guys who are healthy that most guys never had a healthy mentor. They never had a good guide. They didn't see anybody who's like, no, this is how it's done. They didn't have that healthy, like, it's okay. No, slow down, bud. Let me show you how to Mr. Miyagi this shit.
That's how I grew up. My father was totally dysfunctional. My brother's still now totally dysfunctional. My impression of men at the age of even right up till I'd say 16 was they were violent, dangerous, unstable, and predictable creatures. because, like I say, they were overwhelming. They were always bigger than me. This might sound a bit weird, but my father and I had a fist fight when I was 15, and after that, it was quite emotional at the time. It was quite bad, but after that, I realized, hold on, I actually have power because I resisted him. When I was younger, he always overwhelmed me, and my mom and my brother. But that sort of taking back some of the power, and I'm not encouraging people to go smack their fathers. That's a very, very bad idea. He came at me first. Okay, he was a violent man.
Sure.
Although that was the last day he was violent. He never did it again. And many years later, I might have mentioned this last year when we spoke last year, but when I was about 28, I started visiting him again. And by the time he died, we were tight. When I got the news that he passed away, my feeling was I've lost my father in the real traditional sense. Whereas up until 28, I was like, I don't need to ever see him again. And something actually, you touched on it earlier. There's a power in understanding that you can actually still teach your father something. You mentioned it earlier.
It's part of a man's design that at some point we're supposed to pass our parents. Like it's part of a right of manhood that at some point there'll be a topic that you've studied or you understand or you've experienced or you've done. And that's part of your competency. You were saying, like, I've done things and I've practiced things and I've studied and I've talked to people and I've been around. And then you'll start talking to your parents, both parents or all parents, if you have step parents too. And there's a point where you're talking to your parents and you go, wait a second. I think I know more about this than you do. Like there's a point where you're supposed to pass our parents. Our parents are human just like us, and they're teaching us as much as they can. So at some point we have a higher platform to start with, so that way we can go past them. And that's for every coach or mentor is supposed to be. At some point you're supposed to pass your mentor. That's the reason you have a mentor, is you can skip all the years they did the hard way. So that way I'm here and now I can go further. That's the point. And I think people don't realize, like you said, I had to challenge father and then realize my competency was higher than I thought. And now I realize that I can actually pass my father. I didn't understand as a child, a little kid, that was that's like larger than life figure. You can't beat that. It's impossible to defeat that. Yeah. And then realizing, like, wait a second, I think I know more about this than you.
And it's done. Interesting what we both did there. It's based on competency. It's not based on power.
Correct.
Yeah. Very important point.
Do better. You can do better, get better, practice. Yeah. It's important. That's why I said, do your best to be your best, and better is best. If you understand that sentence, you can do a 2-hour training on that sentence.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty stuff. And this is the stuff where, like, are you aiming for better? And I think you and I are very aligned on, like, no, better is best. Perfection.
Absolutely.
Like practice makes better, not practice makes perfect. But if you go for better, you're always best. Like, and you'll pass the best because I'm just trying to get better than me. And you're like, how did you get so good at this? I'm like, I just kept trying to get better. They're like, you're better than everyone now. It's like, I wasn't even trying to be better than everyone. I was just trying to be better than me.
Better than yourself. Exactly.
And somehow you become incredible at it. It's pretty cool.
That whole paradigm that you said about better is best. It's an empathetic paradigm. And that's very important, because if there's any cruelty involved, it becomes exponentially more exhausting.
Correct.
Okay. So if you say, if I said, okay, well, now I feel anxious because I can't bench as much as Rick does.
Being better than you is best creates comparison. That would corrupt the system. You're right.
So like I'll give you an example. Recently, I started swimming. Okay. Now, I believe my whole life I can't swim. I mean, I can swim, but I believed I was not a swimmer. Like, just it's not in my build, But my wife, unfortunately, is a swimmer. So she convinced me to go swimming regularly. Now, all of a sudden, I'm doing a lot of laps and I'm increasing each week. And I'm like, wow, So that just that taste of success is actually all you need. and it's empathetic. That's the crucial point. People listening, especially if you're younger, you need to understand it's a self-compassionate way of succeeding. And that builds self-compassion. This is, again, from research, self-compassionate self-esteem. Self-compassionate self-esteem is more resilient, is more resilient than what mimics self-esteem in the modern world, where I've got 1,000 followers on Instagram.
That's external, though. That's not self.
It's external, okay? Yeah. It's self-esteem, okay? Because you can go on and you get all these likes and you get all these messages and whatever, but it's fragile.
But is it self-esteem? It's still external. It's not self.
Technically it's not 100%, but they think it is.
That's where the flaw in the system is where they're like, because other people tell me I'm good, I must be. Just as if other people tell me I'm bad, I must be. It's like, well, what are you trying to do? Because good and bad is based on what you want. I try to teach people that. Good and like the morality, because you asked a question at the beginning where somebody tried to do a gotcha. And I kind of want, I don't want to beat that gotcha with you. Where someone's like, so who is to judge? That's where somebody asked you when you were like, okay, so who's to judge? Who's to say good and bad? Who's to say right and wrong? And I said, well, it depends on what you want. That's the question. So I'll tell you right now, if I'm eating 7,000 calories of junk food every day, is that good or bad? Well, it depends. Well, I watched that show, like My 600-Pound Life, and I saw like the big people, and I saw those two big fat guys on those little motorcycles, and I got to tell you, coolest fucking thing I've ever seen. I think that is awesome. I want to be the big, huge guy on a little bicycle. I just think that's the fucking coolest. I love that. So I'm eating 7,000 calories every day so I can be the big guy on the little motorcycle. I love it. So is what I'm doing good or bad? Well, based on my goal, it looks like it lines up with your goal, man. It seems like that's right then. But if I want to be very healthy, fit, and I want to run a marathon, and I'm eating junk food and all these things, and it's just making me lethargic and not feel good, I'm having a hard time with it. Is it good or bad? Well, that would be counterproductive. So that would be bad. That goes against your goal. That doesn't go with your goal. And this is where it turns into like, well, good and bad is based on what is it you're trying to do. Well, I want to have a healthy relationship. Well, being abusive isn't going to do that. So maybe you should stop controlling your partner and maybe be a little more accepting and understanding.
Exactly.
And like, this is where, well, what's your goal? Are you trying to get a divorce? No. Well, then stop doing things that give divorces. Exactly. Maybe we listen a little bit instead of try to control. It's these elements that's very interesting to watch people do is the answers are sitting right in front of us, but they're all self. It's inside. It's an internal answer. And I really enjoy like the directions that we go. I think that like this is a funny thing that you and I both do because you do this too. I'm writing it down as you talk. I love that we say things that are incredibly deep that are easy to pass by. This conversation has been a few hours, and if you really broke down like the conversation in pieces, you could do probably an entire year's course of training and understanding off of just the conversation we've had today.
I hope so. Yeah.
You really could. If you break down, like, listen to the principle that Angelo just said. If you take this piece and break this down, we can talk about this for an hour, and that's a very useful thing. Now, here's the thing Rick just said. That's very important. Now, if we expand that, you can see how this applies to your belief systems, and you can use that. Well, you could break this conversation down. And if you understood this conversation in depth, this has beaten multiple elements of shame, doubt, loneliness, isolations, transgender dysphoria. We've gone through things that are like, do you see? It's right there for you to be able to have what you've always wanted. But good and bad has become relative based on the judgments and shame and opinions of others who you have to give power to in order for them to control or rule over you. And simply saying, I disagree, makes it so you take your power back and you allow yourself the space to be authentic again. And your authenticity, it's important to understand that it doesn't matter what the world will try to convince you. You were not born a mistake. You're not born in the wrong body. You're not born in the wrong brain. You're not born wrong. One of my best friends and sister, we had to fight transgenderism because she's lesbian and was taught that she was born in the wrong body. She's very, very boyish. But still through us working together has found God and connection, has found purpose and belonging, has found love and connection. And this is one of my homies. This is one of my people, and no longer hates themselves because of the judgments that they were brought upon in the world, and now loves themselves because they are not a mistake and they are deeply loved. And this is a part where I say purpose and belonging. And so I have these people in my world, and they are still loved for being who they are. And this is where I think people have to practice the acceptance element. If people are going through hard things, and instead of judging, shaming, hurting, ridiculing, blaming, maybe have a little bit of empathy and go, that's not a bad person, that's a hurt person. Exactly. And I think it's going to change the filters that we're using.
Yeah, if I could just add, like, you know, I don't want anyone to misunderstand when I talk about trans and de-trans people. The work that I do is because I understand the reason why people transition ultimately is because they want love. Okay. But it's a misattribution error. There's some elements of it that we call the target error. You were talking about like the obese guy on the motorbike, or the healthy guy that's going to do a triathlon or something. If your target is wrong, it's gonna distort your behavior. So you have to understand the target. And what's so fascinating for me, that's come from the work that I've done with these detransitioners, is they all wanted more love, acceptance, respect, whatever, love. Okay, that's what they were actually after. So often what I've got to do is I've got to kind of help the parents express love without judgment, without the condemnation, you know. So yes, you don't approve of your child transitioning, but let me help you show them that you love them, and let's help them find the skills where they'll be able to live with themselves, you know.
It's tough, man.
I want to point something else out that
go ahead.
So, okay, you go.
Well, your answer is right. This is what's so tricky, is you are correct. Like, your skills are noticeable. You are correct. It's a really tough tug of war right now, because, like, you are right. Research and all these answers and solutions are correct, and you are right. But the fight on this thing, I just had a talk with a young lady who's 14, and she has changed herself into being very manly. She's a beautiful girl, but is now being convinced to be more boyish under the flag and guise that guys are going to try to get her. They're going to try and they're going to get her. They're going to try. She's vulnerable. She's a target, and she's going to be gotten. And I'm like, is anybody doing that? Like, no, but I've heard that it happens. And so I'm going to change my name to boy. I'll be changing my identity and title to he or him. And I'll dress more manly, so that way I'm not sexually vulnerable.
A target. Yeah.
And I'm like, is this happening? Like, well, I'm just going to go ahead and get ahead of it and prevent something that's never happened from happening to me, just in case. Correct. And that means the entire armor system is built on fear, but you can't convince them of that, because it's very obvious to you and me. It's like, this is a fear-based protection system, which means it's completely fabricated based on an imaginary reality that doesn't exist right now. That's not happening. There's nobody trying to get you. And if anybody was, your dad's right there, fuck them up. So like, there's a strong male around. And so that's not a thing either. And it's very difficult, because while you are correct to be able to get them to see it, because there is a conditioning that happens way more than the reality, is that you're going to be gotten. You're going to be gotten. You're vulnerable.
Told that every day.
They're going to get you. They're going to get you. They're going to get you.
The men are going to get you.
Yeah, the men are going to get you. And like, this is where it's interesting, is that, like, there is a massive, far bigger majority of men that are protectors than the getters. Like, this is a tiny percentage of guys that, when good men are around, that shit doesn't fly.
No.
And there's more guys who protect than guys who try to be these getting guys.
Let's put some numbers to that. Okay. 1% of the population are psychopaths or sociopaths. 1%. Okay. There'll be maybe another 2% that are perpetrators of some kind of violence against women. Okay. The problem is, and this is just to balance this, the problem is they offend a lot. That's the problem. So there is a problem with men abusing women, but it's usually the same men It's not all men. Okay. This is something that gets argued in public. So
it's very true. But that would then mean 97% of guys are not the guys that you're talking about.
No.
And that's what I tell people. I'm like, how many guys did you walk by that did not hurt you in your life? How many guys have you walked by that didn't hurt you?
And your family?
Like, I don't know. Thousands and thousands.
Millions,
I'm like, that's how many guys don't do that.
Yeah.
You're worried about that one guy who's going to maybe someday get you. But how many guys are like, I don't do that?
Well, look, people should listen to you, and they should read someone called David Buss. He's one of the fathers of evolutionary psychology. He writes about bad men. I mean, one of his books is literally Bad Men. And he explains this all in detail. But look, there's the dark side of this topic is there's other girls who are raised that don't understand that there are malevolent men.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a phenomenon that happens in girls between, I think it's 16 and like 24. It's a phenomenon that's actually studied. They seem to have no capacity to recognize psychopathic men. So this is why you hear about these otherwise very intelligent girls with dangerous men.
About because they were sheltered? Usually there's no explanation or exposure to the reality of like there's bad things out there.
Sheltered,
and if you do shelter without, because it's better to have exposure with explanation than it is to say shelter for protection. And so they're going out with no training and no awareness. And so it's kind of like going like, hey, look, a doggy. And like, no, that's a fucking wolf. Don't fucking pet that one. Doggies are nice. It's like, no, that one's going to fucking get you. Like, there's no understanding that there are wolves too. There are dogs, and there's a lot of good dogs. But sometimes there are coyotes, and there are wolves, and there are bad dogs. Like, and so you don't go pet all the dogs, or you will get stitches or hurt really bad. And so that's I would put that under poor parenting or poor training, because you set your kids up to become food. You train your kid to be prey instead of have awareness to go, I need to be aware of bad areas.
Yeah, I'd say there's the two tails of this, because the other tail is girls that grew up with men that were psychopathic already.
Fair enough.
So they get used to that paradigm.
That's different, because then they
it is very different,
seek what's familiar, not walk into blindly. So that's all they would know. So naivety is different than that's all I know. And so those are that's going to be like, I'm just attracted to what is familiar.
It's the opposite. Yeah.
So that's different. The ones who go like the women who have no clue that there's bad guys and then find bad guys. There's also usually a codependency thing or a naivety there too.
Absolutely.
Is where love is usually going to be shown, and you'll see the people who fall into behavior that falls into the fawning element of it, where my mom was always doing everything for my dad, and my dad needed a lot because my dad wasn't okay. And so I have to find a guy that I have to do a lot for. And so in order to be loved, I have to do a lot of help, or I have to be needed. And so I'm going to find a needy guy, and a needy guy will never leave me because he'll need me. And so I need a needy guy so that I'm needed, so you don't leave me. And this turns into a codependency based on like what looks like a good thing, but the fawning element makes you self-sacrifice until there's nothing left. Unfortunately, that's the bait for narcissists. And that's why you see the super nice girl end up with the narcissistic guy, or vice versa, the really nice guy with the narcissistic girl, is because the needy bottom feeders, the ones who prey on the ones who needs me, they're like, oh, look at this low-hanging fruit. I'm going to promise them the world and then destroy them.
Exactly.
And that's they'll isolate them and then take everything they've got and then destroy them while they're alone.
Yeah.
And this is a big part of just low awareness of understanding that if you're shopping in the rescue department instead of premium, you're probably going to get some really fucked up strays.
Exactly. Yeah, I want to say, like, just reflecting on the last, 3 hours, more or less, with a little break in between. A lot of this, I think the reason I enjoy talking to you is I can sense when someone is themselves self-actualized, and you've done it with self-compassion. So it's easy for you to be compassionate. I mean, from the minute I met you, I sensed compassion. and with that balance of self-actualization. Like, I know who I am, and I'm able to be compassionate towards you. And I mean, we don't know each other that well, but based on the principles, as you said, but it's also about, there's a completely different level of insight that can be achieved when people are resonating on that aiming to be self-actualized in a self-compassionate way. Then it's easier. It's so natural. I mean, this conversation is live. You know, anyone listening to this, Rick and I haven't spoken in a year.
It's been a year. Yeah,
but we gelled immediately. We gelled the first time, and we gelled again not because we read the same books. We come at these things from very different angles, you know, but these things work, guys. They work. That's why you need to listen. Maybe I should end it with that.
No, that's a good place to end it. Angelo, if people want to go like, this is a great I'm glad I got to listen to this conversation. I got to learn more about what Angelo, Vincent, Deboni is doing. Where should they go to check out some of your stuff? Or if they've got people who are like, I've got a friend who's going through the detransitioning and they need help, or they're struggling in this pattern, how can they get a hold of you, or how can they find where your resources are?
Well, probably the easiest thing, I did put it on my handle there on your screen. If you go to X or Twitter, go to Vincent Psych SE. The SE, by the way, is allocated to Sweden, because I used to live in South Africa. So they can find me there, and there's stuff there's lots of stuff that I've done there, mostly related to the trans and detrans issue. But my first passion for people that are listening is male mental health. Okay, that's actually my first passion, because I was the kid that put a shotgun under my chin when I was 13. I told you last year when we first spoke. And I realized, you know, as I got older, that there was no one for me. And I feel that since I've entered psychology, I think I've saved a lot of people's lives. Well, I know I have. And that is just gold. Like, more than money, more than anything else. The fact that, you know, a young man in South Africa with limited resources can access me and find the courage to deal with his son's future now, you know, to me is just gold. So for probably more relevant to your listeners, I do work with the Male Center for the Male Center for the Center for Male Psychology in the UK. Sorry, the Center for Male Psychology in the UK. I've got 1 or 2 articles on their site as well, and I collaborate with John Barry occasionally. So the male psychology thing is like the basis. But what's interesting about that is when you understand male psychology, it's much easier to understand female psychology. Okay. Whereas most of psychology in the last 40, 50, 60 years has become a feminized profession. The literature, it's very infused by feminism. The way we deal with men is very feminized. I know we spoke about this last year, I remember. So the approach that I take is, yes, with the principles in counseling psychology, but it's a masculine approach, you know. And the irony is a lot of women love it, because we get to the meat of things, you know. You're very right. Yeah, I know you've experienced that as well.
I've been doing this now, and I'm with you too. I've lost count how many guys I've pulled out of the hell that is the edge. Like, I've lost count of how many of those end my life calls I've had to do, and done them in my family too. Like, it's like there are people who are alive today because of the conversations that you and I will have with them, and that will echo in eternity. There will be generations that have opportunity because of those conversations. So I honor you as a frontline warrior. Like, I honor you, Angelo.
Rick. Yeah.
And so it's pretty amazing to have that. And I definitely want more conversations about this when you understand the men than you understand the women. And it's very, very loud when you see it. And so I'm with you, where I'm like, when I train the women and I train couples, the information, it's so loud that the pattern can't be hidden. I'm like, it's too loud, but he's got his thing. But ladies, don't think that this is a free ride. You have a thing too. It's reciprocity. There's a thing we both do. We both have purpose. We both have meaning, and neither is a mistake. But embrace what our purpose is and what a harmony we can create.
Yes, love that. Yeah, I often talk about synchronicity and harmony.
We have more conversations we need to do.
Okay, we do. I think we found a better system, so we can do it again. Yeah.
You got it. All right, brother. Well, it's such an honor to hang with you, man. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah.
And let's do more of these. So everybody go check out Angelo, check out his stuff. He's got speeches out there and he's got some good content.
Yeah.
Check him out. And then if you have people who are in crisis or people who are really struggling with identity, especially in the trans field, reach out to Angelo so he can help make sure that they do it in a safe way or a deeper understanding for the choices they're making.
Yeah.
That's really what we're about, is just trying to make sure we take care of our fellow man and woman and whatever you want to be called. It's just we're all people trying to get through.
Absolutely. Whatever. Yeah.
All right, brother. Thanks for hanging. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Cheers.
Click on the button and you can become the hero in your own story. It's time to start making the choices to change. And the evolution that you're going to do begins with choosing the next step. This is the way. And together, we're always stronger.